Well, hello there, ladies and gentlemen of YouTube. It is me, Ryan, aka DeBus, and you guys know that already. Welcome back to the channel, guys. This is honestly awesome to be doing another live stream with you guys again. So a bit of explanation is going to be needed for this, from the title and everything else. So this, guys, to keep it brief, first of all, hello. It's been a long time. Welcome to see you guys back here on the channel once again. This is actually going to be a live show, aptly titled The Nostalgia Factor, which is inspired from a Facebook comment I got. And yes, let's get the part out of the way. Yes, I'm trying a new hairstyle, okay? I shaved off the rest of my hair, so I'm rolling the ultra white bald look currently. So for anyone mentions that, of course. But yeah, so let's just get that part out. So this is a gaming live show. I've done plenty of live streams over the course of my YouTube career with you guys here on The Boss. And this is actually going to be a dedicated live stream with a guest who, if I can get this correctly, if I can, I'm still working on the kinks of this a little bit. If I can get this in, And to
Hey,
stream.
there I am.
Speaking of, well,
Yay.
hello, Dennis. Welcome
there.
to the live stream, my man. This is actually the first time I think I've done a face camera event with you, anything YouTube related or anything else. So welcome to the
pretty
stream,
much.
though. So let's get this part out of the way here first. My terrible intro to this aside. Sorry, it's been a minute since I've done a live recording here on StreamYard. I can't even think of the name. This is so. Here's a bit of an introduction. Guys, forget the first 2 minutes of this when I was setting up before Dennis entered. Hey guys, welcome back to The Boss Official. It has been a minute since I've been back here on the YouTube channel, and let's get this part out of the way. Like I mentioned, yes, I am fully bald currently. I'm trying out a new hairstyle. I only had about this much to work with anyway. So before anyone comments down below in chat or on the video version of this when we're done recording or anything else, please don't. I'm just trying it out. Okay, if it doesn't work out, I'll just grow back. So we'll be good. But nonetheless, though, so I've addressed that part. Welcome back to another stream, guys. To keep this description brief, I have started up a new channel show called The Nostalgia Factor, which I know I have another retro game channel with the exact same name, but someone suggested that this name would be better than Retro Rewind. Hence, that's why I went with The Nostalgia Factor. This show would primarily consist of talking about video game topics, but it's also centered around, obviously, community interaction as well as with guests and all that other stuff. But this is a gaming-centered show, and this would be the pilot for that live show, if you want to call it that. But that's enough about me. You guys know full well who I am here on this channel. I've been doing it for many years at this point. May I enter a friend of mine here on the platform and in the podcasting scene, Dennis, from the show Rulebooks Anonymous. Dennis,
hey, thanks.
You want to talk about a little about yourself? I've talked about you here on the channel actually in the past, but do you want to kind of describe who you were for the audience?
Sure. I am. I go by the Dr. Lord Reverend D on pretty much everything that I do. I do legally have all those titles now. I've told my daughter I'm just going to collect titles. You know, some people collect Pogs or video games. I'm collecting titles. So here's where we're at. I'm a co-host on Rulebooks Anonymous. We're a podcast that covers board games, video games, card games, mind games. Not so much. No mind games. And pop culture. Just covering all of it. It's more therapy for me than anything.
Wow, see?
Yeah.
That's pretty good, too, actually. A buddy of mine on YouTube, Goof Norton, I think I've mentioned him during our podcasting session that we did, actually, wow, like a few years ago now, like 2. But he does,
gosh.
Yeah, but I think it was 2 years ago we did that. We'll get to that here in a second before we get to the gaming stuff. But my buddy of mine, Goof Norton, here on the platform, he's mentioned in conversations I've had with him, he does it for the exact same reasons, which is a huge benefit of doing podcasting, live shows, whatever. It really helps as a way to just kind of vent to the camera or to the audience. And yeah, it's definitely cheaper than therapy. I can assure you of that one. So you're better off just doing this, I guess, if it really helps you out. But yeah, that's good to hear about all your shows. Actually, I've never done a collaboration with Dennis here on the YouTube channel in terms of like an official video or anything like that. But one thing that we have done is podcasting. I actually met Dennis through, I think it was was it a podcasting Facebook group by any chance?
Yeah, I think it was the Facebook group.
I think it was. You guys know I kind of still do a podcast of my own called the Bosscast. And I did about a season's worth of episodes. I did about 12 episodes before I stopped for a little while. And it took me about a year to produce the season finale to that season. So sorry about that. But during that time when I was doing the Bosscast season 1, that's when I met Dennis. I invited him as a guest to talk about, I think, fighting games in that episode.
Yes, I remember that. Yep.
And then we completely abandoned the topic about halfway through and started talking about everything else. But we ended up doing that podcast together. It was such a fun time. And then Dennis, he invited me to be on one of his shows as well, where I think we did RPGs, didn't we? During that time period. I think that was the but we ended up doing that podcast episode on his actually, you guys, I'll probably link it down below in the description and whatnot after this episode if you guys want to go watch it. But we did an episode together talking about that, which was a really fun experience. So fast forward probably about a year and a half, maybe I think it was about 2 years ago. Actually, it was in 2021 we did those podcast episodes, I believe. But
gosh, has it really been that long?
Yeah, it has been that long. Wow. It's crazy. But Dennis has been he's been killing it in the podcasting scene, unlike yours truly, who just now came out with the season. Wow, episode 12 of my season 1 finale after I don't even know how many, like a year or two it took me to make that finale where I talked about my college internships and my graduation. So that was a while. But yeah, ended up rolling from there. But that's how I met Dennis. And those are a few of the collaborations we've done. So now that we have some backstory established here on the stream, guys, this is what we are going to be doing for this episode here today. Dennis and I are huge fans of this little known company. You probably never heard of them, called Square Enix.
So small. So small.
Exactly. Yeah. They've never produced any games whatsoever. You know, that Final Fantasy, Kingdom Hearts, whatever series. Nah, it was like Capcom or somebody else. It wasn't them. But for sure Square had Mega Man.
Atari.
Atari. That's a bunch. Yeah, Atari made all of them, guys. That's why Atari is definitely still in business. But we ended up. We're huge fans of the RPG scene and whatnot. And Dennis, I'd like to hear from you because you have been a fan of both Final Fantasy and Square far longer than myself. I actually just became a huge fan of Final Fantasy 2 years ago. So how did you get started with like Square as a company or Final Fantasy or whichever one you want to start off with for some background?
It honestly started back in '97 when Final Fantasy VII came out for the very first time. And,
gosh, I wasn't even born then. So you definitely have a leg up on me.
Yeah, because I had just gotten my PlayStation and I was playing like, Metal Gear, Resident Evil and stuff like that, fighting games. And it was just, I was looking for something that was going to actually take me a while to beat. And I kept seeing all the commercials for it. I had a couple buddies say, oh yeah, you should check it out. It's pretty fun. And so I started playing it and it's like, wow, this actually is going to take me a while to beat. And there's so much going into it. And I just got hooked on RPGs with Final Fantasy VII. Actually, I still have this relic from the past.
Oh man, I don't have that strategy guide either. Son of a gun.
It's the one with the spoilers.
Is that the good strategy guide, or is that like the off-brand one that nobody likes because of the spoilers?
Oh no, it was the Brady's game one, but it was the one that everyone got pissed off about because it had spoilers for the story. And I think after that, everyone was saying like, okay, no more spoilers. You guys did a great job with like the walkthrough, but just no more spoilers. Because it was like that huge pivotal moment at the end of disc 1.
I remember that actually. Yeah, which I think is probably like one of the most spoiled gaming moments of all time, but it'll be spoiler free just for those of you who have never played the game. Yeah, we won't spoil the ending of disc 1 if you for some reason don't know one of the biggest twists in gaming history for some reason. But yeah, we won't spoil that. I was actually curious too. I think I was doing some research into Final Fantasy merchandise. Since you bring up the strategy guide, I have quite a sizable collection. I guess we could talk about maybe later. But for right now, I wanted to get a strategy guide. And when I was doing some research, I saw the Brady Games guide, the one you're talking about with all the spoilers in it. But there was a secondary one made with Cloud holding like the Buster Sword really high on the cover. And that apparently included a lot of original art from the company. who had originally developed some of these strategy guides or RPG guides. So I really liked that one because of the artwork, but at the same time, though, it also wasn't as detailed as the original Brady Games guide. So I don't know if I could justify the $100 price tag for it just based off the artwork alone, but it was still something kind of cool. I wasn't sure if you owned that one or not.
I do not. This was actually the very first strategy guide that I had ever purchased. So I mean,
I can only I can only imagine how much that's going for nowadays. Like how much that original strategy guide's worth that you have currently.
It's not in great shape. It is like it's dog-eared. It's like, you know, just I think I spilled soda on it a couple of times. Just it was like some of my buddies, like, you know, but this is the 90s and everything. So like the cliches, you go hang out with your buddies and you go and drink and, you know, eat pizza and everything. My buddies and I, we played video games until like 4 o'clock in the morning. It was like Final Fantasy, Zelda, or Tony Hawk. And
I'm proud to hear that, Dennis. You're the real athletes of the 90s.
Oh yeah,
it's about. But yeah, that's cool to hear, though. That's an interesting piece of merchandise. That's cool to hear that how you got into Final Fantasy. And from what I understand, a lot of people, they got into the series from Final Fantasy VII. It was the RPG that was, you know, the graphics were cool at the time. It included all the 3D models. It was the revolutionary RPG and video game period that really changed the landscape of gaming. And Square, they made a huge, for those who don't know the brief story, Square basically broke it off with Nintendo because originally Final Fantasy VII was going to be on the Nintendo 64. So whenever they kind of cut ties with Nintendo in that regard, which they didn't reconcile their relationship to like the GameCube days, they made a huge deal with PlayStation. The deal was that Sony, in that case, they would front $10 million toward the advertisement of this huge new 3D RPG that they wanted to make from the Final Fantasy series. They floated the bill to them for about $10 million in marketing, but they would exclusively make 3 Final Fantasy games in 3D for the PS1. But this was a huge gamble for Sony because up to that point, they had really only developed, or for Square rather, they'd only really developed for Nintendo up to that point, I believe, like the Super Nintendo and whatnot. I don't think they really made any other games, unless you know of any that I'm missing. But I think they just...
It was pretty much Final Fantasy. We only got 3 of the games here in the States because we got Final Fantasy 1 on original Nintendo. Mm-hmm. Final Fantasy 4 was rebranded as Final Fantasy 2 on Super Nintendo. And Final Fantasy 6 was rebranded as Final Fantasy 3 on Super Nintendo. And then, of course, you got things like Chrono Trigger as well, which the well-read mage on Twitter will say is a Final Fantasy game. And, you know, I can't really debate that because there's a lot of similarities.
There are. Definitely.
A fantastic game.
Oh, yes, absolutely. But that's kind of like the back history. They made this huge deal with Sony, and that's how Final Fantasy VII really took off. So it was a huge deal when it released in 1997, and so many people got their start that way. I also got my start from Final Fantasy VII, and it was really good. My start was in 2021, not in 1997 when everybody else experienced the game. I was born in 1998, spoiler alert, and I'm currently 24 years old at this time. Not as old, not as prestigious as Dennis here. I haven't aged like fine wine. He still has hair. But nonetheless, though, on that one, I am still someone who has played a lot of video games in my shorter lifespan, so that's still something. But I played Final Fantasy VII. I can't remember. It was August of 2021 is where I first played Final Fantasy VII, and I never played an RPG before. I think when we first did that podcast episode on the Bosscast, I told you that I wasn't very familiar with the RPG genre or the scene or anything else. That didn't age very well because like 2 months later, I played a ton of RPGs in that time period. And I took a chance on playing 7 because I heard this was considered to be one of the best games of all time. People absolutely loved it. I had no experience with turn-based RPGs, but I gave it a shot anyway on the PS1. Loved the game. It is my favorite game of all time. Spoiler alert on that one. I absolutely love Final Fantasy VII. It introduced me to an entirely brand new series for Final Fantasy, and I have played a ton of the games since then. Not all of them are perfect, mind you, but I have played a lot of them since then, and a lot of other Square properties, so my backstory isn't as cool as Dennis's here. I didn't play it when the game came out, but as someone who's a newbie to Final Fantasy, in a way, I can definitely say they are quality titles regardless of that. So that's kind of where my background kind of hits when it comes to experiencing these RPGs. What I want to kind of do here for Final Fantasy, I guess I'll ask a blanket question, I guess, for myself and Dennis. Dennis, you can go first if you want. What would you say is your favorite Final Fantasy game you've experienced, and what is the absolute worst Final Fantasy if you had to choose one? I have one right off the bat. Well, my favorite I've already spoiled, but you can go ahead there.
Okay, so favorite of all time, if I'm going through the entire catalog that I've played, I would have to say Tactics. I think I told you the story because I'm going to age myself even further. This was back in like 98, 99 when it was released, and I went to Blockbuster to rent it, which, God, I'm a dinosaur at this point. But I played the game, and it was a lot different from other RPGs. I had never played a tactical RPG before, because this one you're moving your characters around, and then you can gain experience points from beating up your own units. And so, like, what should have taken me maybe 10 minutes to fight was probably about an hour, because I'm sitting there just grinding HP off of my own guys and everything. So it got to the point where I couldn't rent it anymore. And so I spent months tracking down an actual copy of my own. I finally found one. It was just the game disc at a used game store for $40. I went, I got the money, I bought it, and I'll be damned, 2 weeks later, it's released as a greatest hits everywhere, and it's like $20.
My gosh.
I was filled with a very complicated kind of rage at that point. I'm not exactly sure how I felt. I was angry, but I was like, okay, other people are going to get to enjoy this game, so I guess that's something.
Yeah, fair enough on that one. Plus, I think you made it out too, because that Black Label copy of Tactics is worth some money now too. So,
oh yeah, I've got it floating around here somewhere. My office is a mess at home, but it's in here somewhere. And as for worst, I'd probably say Mystic Quest. I'm sorry, I just don't like it.
I guess I shouldn't be surprised on that one. I've never played Mystic Quest, but from what I understand, it's like the poor man's Final Fantasy from how I've heard it described in the past. Because Square, to tide people over, they released this random RPG with the Final Fantasy branding on the Super Nintendo, and everyone was like, yeah, they made something. It's not Final Fantasy, though.
It's like someone trying to make a Final Fantasy game from reading the description on the back of a box.
It's a good way to describe it, actually.
That's what it felt like, and it's like, and I can't do this one.
Yeah, I don't blame you one bit. I haven't played Mystic Quest, but all the footage that I've seen on YouTube, it reminds me of, like, if someone, like you said, if someone develops a game, this is what they think an RPG is, but they haven't actually played one, much less from the actual Final Fantasy series. This is what you would assume, like, a generic RPG to be, basically. And then you just shove it out on the Super Nintendo. Because from what I understand, Mystic Quest was designed to be like it was designed to hold fans over until the next mainline Final Fantasy came out at that point, which I think was like, what, 4 or 5? I'm not sure the exact year Mystic Quest released, but I think it was like a holdover until the next one came out.
Yeah, I think it was before 5.
Okay,
so 5 was the one that really took off the job system in terms of like their innovation for that game.
That sounds about right there too, actually. Like I said, never played Mystic Quest before, and I haven't played Tactics. I've heard a lot of good things. People are, if you're someone who's into like the tile or grid-based RPGs, then this game will definitely be one that you absolutely love for the gameplay. From what I gather, people mostly like Tactics, not just for the battle system or the visuals or anything else, because it's impressive for a PS1 game, but it's mainly it's considered to be like one of the best stories and cast of characters in the Final Fantasy series, period. People absolutely love Tactics for the story alone.
It's extremely deep. It's an extremely deep. That's one of the things that I've noticed is that Squeenix does really well with stories for the most part until you get to some of the later Final Fantasies. Right. But the breakdown of that one, I mean, there's talk of like, what does it mean to be a hero, doing the right thing, faith in yourself, in God, whatever. One of the cool things that they had in there was they had secret characters like Cloud, for example.
Yeah, I saw that.
The level of customization that you can do with your characters. You can have a Dark Knight with summoning powers, or a chemist with gunner abilities. So I mean, like, you could mix and match so much, and it was just extremely cool to me at the time, just because I was like picking and choosing all the cool abilities and everything for my character, and just, yeah, I mean, you can have so much fun with that.
Oh yeah, absolutely on that one. I mean, and that's one of the things that I would really love to play tactics for, if anything, even if I'm not a huge fan of like the tile-based RPGs, because I'm someone who really, I like the turn-based battle system. I think that's probably my preferred way of playing a lot of these classic RPGs. But I have to give props to tactics though, because I would love to play it just for the story alone, because I do look for story when I play video games, period. It's part of the reason why I absolutely, especially in an RPG, because if you're going to invest dozens of hours into random battles, leveling up, customization, and all that, you're going to want to have a good story to carry you along. Because the longest game that I've played, period, like for a single playthrough, not total number of hours invested into it, was Final Fantasy X. That was the game that I think probably took me 45 hours to beat that game. And what kept me going throughout that game was the cast of characters, the visuals, the beautiful visuals at the time, since this was like one of the first PS2 games to come out. I loved the journey of Tidus and Yuna. I loved the stuff with Sin. I thought like the political elements and like real world elements they brought into it, with like political corruption and everything else, and religious corruption as well in that game too is represented. It's all really good. Final Fantasy, and the soundtrack is amazing. And the battle system with the turn chart and being able to switch out your party members without costing a turn or anything else, that was just amazing. And I don't think the Final Fantasy series has really replicated that since that release. 10's not perfect. I do really like 10. Blitzball is one of the worst things I've done in a side game, and as a side quest in any video game. I hate Blitzball so much. But,
I was going to ask about the chocobos. Did you ever manage to beat the chocobos?
No, no, I did. I cannot put up with that stupid side quest for Tidus's ultimate weapon. It's so stupid. Getting exactly 0 seconds.
Oh yeah, it is extremely frustrating, and I will admit that is the first RPG where I have broken a controller. I've broken controllers.
Oh wow!
I have broken probably a total of 10 controllers since the PlayStation 1 days.
Oh really? Oh jeez.
It was mostly like PlayStation 1 and 2 controllers, but like, that's the first one that I broke from an RPG just out of sheer frustration, was the damn chocobos.
And the thing is too, because Final Fantasy X, for example, is notorious because a lot of these like mini games or side quests, whatever you want to call them, to get each character's best weapon. It is so, some of them are fine, like Auron's and Kimahri. Like Kimahri, you have the butterfly chasing minigame in Macalania Forest. Like you have to catch certain colored butterflies and avoid the other ones. It's tedious, but it's not bad. But the worst one outside of Tidus's ultimate weapon, before I get to my least favorite Final Fantasy game, it's not 10 by the way, but it is really good. The worst one is the worst one by far is probably Lulu's. The lightning dodging. Yeah, the lightning dodging bullcrap that you have to do in the Thunder Plates. Some of the stupidest things I've seen to get an ultimate weapon. And the thing for me is, I love these characters, and they're each designed for like that rock paper scissors gameplay approach. But the biggest draw for me is, why in the world would I dodge 200 consecutive lightning bolts? And you can't even cheat, by the way, with a rapid fire controller, because each movement, every time Tidus dodges a lightning bolt, it's registered. So you can't cheat in the game either with like a customized controller. Why would I do all of that when I could just customize a better weapon with Riku's ability in the game? When I can trick out a better weapon and level up the sphere grid, why in the world would I do these side quests or these mini games? I would say that's probably the worst part of Final Fantasy X for me, was definitely like that and Blitzball. Blitzball I cannot get into. It is one of the worst side things I've done in a game. I'll be honest, the first time I played Final Fantasy X was in 2021. And Blitzball was something I was seriously going to try and get into. I was going to be like, okay, I know it has a reputation, but I think I'm going to give this one a legitimate shot. I'm going to see if I can get it. I knew right away when I didn't get the Jack shot that I was in trouble.
Oh, no.
Yeah. So I gave it a try, but the reward's not even worth it. I mean, it's just a frustrating mini game. And you only get 10 strength spheres in the Crystal Cup trophy that shows up on screen for like 30 seconds when Waka hands it to the Aurochs. So it's just it's not worth it.
And the deck is completely stacked against you throughout the entire game. I mean, even if you manage to go out and recruit better players, their stats are still crap compared to all the other games you're playing.
It's so bad. It's, oh gosh. But even with all of that said about 10, especially, yeah, like that intro game, because you have the Aurochs going against the Luca Goers, who apparently are the team with like the highest stats in the game that you go against, the best team and the worst team, because the Aurochs are awful. They are the worst blitzball team unless you're willing to invest the time into recruiting players and adding them to your roster. Yeah, they're not very good. Winning that Killica match I just don't think it's worth it ultimately. But nonetheless, though, all of that being said, 10 is still a fantastic game. It is still one that I do recommend people play. And Dennis, from the sound of it, you've had some good experiences with 10 as well.
Yeah.
And some meh ones too, concerning Blitzball.
One of the strangest things with 10 for me was that was the main reason that I bought a PS2. But when I went to purchase the game, this was when I was working at a pub and everything. And so I did not realize at the time that I had gone out on Black Friday to go and buy the game. And so I'm in like EB Games and everything. And like, wow, this must be a really good game if you're coming out on Black Friday. It's like, oh yeah, it's Black Friday. Isn't
Oh
it?
no.
That explains why I can't get anywhere in the
There you
mall.
go. Oh, gosh. I'm so sorry to hear that. Oh, was it? Okay, well, at least got something out of it. That's good.
Yeah, it was definitely worth it. I would stay up super late just playing the heck out of that game.
Right.
Just a lot of like farming the different spheres and everything. Mm-hmm. You can always get a Game Shark if you want to just cheat your way to get all the ultimate weapons. I'm not gonna condemn anyone for that. I get the frustration.
Hey guys, if you're playing Final Fantasy X today, do you hate going to chocobo races and trying to get 0 seconds on the clock? Do you hate dodging lightning 200 times? Do you hate having to sneak up behind a cactuar that will pump you with thousands of needles if you get caught in the desert? Well, good news. There's a Game Shark for that. There's basically there's your advert for it. Yeah, I don't blame you either. It's just frustrating content in that regard. But 10 is still a really good game nonetheless, but it's not my favorite or my least favorite. My least favorite Final Fantasy by far, and it's genuinely a toss-up for me between 8 and Dirge of Cerberus, to be honest.
Okay.
The only reason that I'm hesitant on saying Dirge, I am a huge Final Fantasy VII nut. I love Final Fantasy VII. It's my favorite. It's my favorite Final Fantasy game. It's a game that, to keep this brief as well, I love 7 not because of the art style or anything else, because it does look dated compared to some other games like 6 and Chrono Trigger and other like pixel art games that look really good today. It's not because of the visuals, it's because of the storytelling, the characters, the themes that surround Cloud and his identity, and like his self-doubts, his memory loss, his conflict with Sephiroth and all that. It was all those story and character relationships and just everything that 7 brought to the table in terms of storytelling, the battle system, the materia. It was really cool and customizable. I absolutely just loved every single part of the battle system as well. The music is amazing. Nobuo Uematsu was a genius with every single game that he worked on. His music in 7 was great. So with a refined battle system, a good materia system, excellent cast of characters, and just a very good, well-paced story for the most part. It does have a few snags, specifically after Cloud leaves the party and ends up in Mideel in a wheelchair. Admittedly, like, don't get me wrong, I get the fact they have to wrap up the game because you're going after Sephiroth, you have to finish off Shinra and everything else, but come on, while Cloud's in a coma and you want to see him get better, you're stealing huge materia from Shinra around the world and then stopping them. By the way, has anyone ever questioned this? Shinra might be the bad guys, but they're trying to destroy Meteor too. Everyone's gonna die if this thing hits the planet. So why are you trying to stop Shinra from using not a terrible idea of launching a rocket up with a huge explosive ball of materia? Why are you trying to stop them from doing that to destroy Meteor and save the world? You're like, nah, we're gonna steal this from Shinra, screw the planet. It's like, doesn't make any sense.
I think there was a parody cartoon that actually called that out.
Yeah, I don't blame him for that either, because I don't know if I've seen that parody or not, but I don't blame him for showcasing that, because it's true. Like, why in the world would you even bother at that point? But
exactly, you'd think they would all be working together because it's a common goal.
Exactly, but if that doesn't end up happening, you get the huge materia back. Cloud, he accepts his true identity in that regard too. After Tifa and Aerith's influence goes into his subconscious, you find out who Cloud is. You stomp out the rest of Shinra after Rufus dies, quote unquote, in Diamond Weapons blast, and you take out Hojo finally, and then go and confront Sephiroth, and then you save the planet. Like it's not a perfect game. It does have issues. My two biggest issues with 7 have always been the camera angles and controls in certain dungeons. Because navigating certain ones can be a pain in the butt, depending. I'm looking at you specifically, Northern Crater, with those stupid poles that you have to put in there to keep track of your movements. I was never a huge fan of that section, but it's mostly dungeon layout and control. And my other issue is some of the required mini games that you have to do throughout the game. You have your simple ones like a CPR mini game with Cloud, when a girl almost drowns when you get to Junon for the first time. That one's fine. Some of the other ones in like the Gold Saucer, I don't have an issue with those because those are all entirely optional. You don't have to do any of them if you don't want to. It was just something to pass the time. I think the mini game that irritated me the most, I'm trying to think here, because the submarine mini game was the tower defense one I wasn't a huge fan of. I'll say that might be like one of the worst ones for me.
I think that was honestly a throwback to 6 because it reminds me a lot of the Invasion of Narsh by Captain. In terms of like, arranging all of your troops and everything. So I never really liked that one either. I was like, I could just get out there and beat all these guys up myself. I mean, it'd go a lot faster.
I mean, I'm not gonna lie. Every single time I played 7 over the past few years, I've deliberately failed that minigame and then just beat the boss at the end. Because the boss fight is easier than winning the tower defense game, I think, personally. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
So I would say outside of the minigame issues and some like control and dungeon layout, this game, it's really good. That's why I love 7 so much. And it introduced me to RPGs in general and more of Square's library. But I absolutely love 7 for that. And that's why it's my favorite game of all time. It's an experience, a storytelling experience like no other in any other game I've played. And any experiences that I had after that in RPGs or games, it was because of 7. Because I would not have played Chrono Trigger, any of the other Final Fantasies. I wouldn't have dipped my toes in the Lunar series or anything else if it wasn't for 7 and its storytelling. So that's why 7 is my personal favorite. And my least favorite one, I'm not going to drag this one too much because this game's been drug in the dirt already. Dirge of Cerberus, looking at you. There's a lot of people who have a love-hate relationship with Dirge of Cerberus.
I could never get the controls. I struggled.
Did you ever beat the game?
I never made it past the first level. My brain did not connect with using the controls. I couldn't use magic, and I don't know what the heck I was doing wrong. I'm like it's like there's a complete disconnect, and I never got into it. And it's like, well, I just won't play this one, I guess.
Then I'm gonna feel real bad saying this. I beat Dirge of Cerberus, so I can tell I can give a little bit of insight into this one. I didn't say I was proud of it, but I did beat Dirge of Cerberus. How do I describe Dirge to everybody? It's basically what happens when you take a cool character but an obscure one like Vincent Valentine from Final Fantasy VII, and you throw him into Square's first and really only attempt at a third-person RPG shooter game. The answer is not very good, because Square Enix they don't make shooter games. Square, you just stick with RPGs. You're very good at that. But in short, I mean, here's my thing with Dirge of Cerberus. It was meant to be a follow-up from Final Fantasy VII and Advent Children. It was meant to give Vincent his own solo game. It pits you up against some enemies, Deep Ground, who were like these secret group of soldiers experimented on by Shinra to make like their own army. They're after Vincent's proto-materia, the thing that allows him to control his chaos form within his chest. And they want to use that to resurrect the last weapon on the planet. I think it's Omega. They want to release Omega to the world, and they want to destroy the entire planet as a result of that. Or Omega somehow, from the ending monologue from Hojo, spoilers, I guess, he's still kind of alive in this one. But they want to, I guess Omega will transport them to another planet they can conquer or something. I don't know. I didn't follow that part completely. The goal really doesn't make any sense, because all that's going to happen is they're going to destroy they want to wipe out the planet. I mean, that's already kind of been done twice, may I add. Advent Children and the original game. So, Dirge of Cerberus has a lot of issues. The two things that I like about it the most, the CG cutscenes look really good. I will admit Square did a really good job on those. That and the fan service that's sprinkled throughout the game. Did you ever look up any gameplays or like seeing like cutscenes or anything from later in the game, Dennis, since you didn't beat it?
I did not.
Okay. In that case, then I'll just briefly tell you and the audience here. With Dirge of Cerberus, they tried to go the route of including a bunch of fan service for the Final Fantasy series. Vincent spends the entire game going to different locations, some from the original, some not, taking out all of these Deep Ground members using the third-person shooting controls, as well as using some accessories that you can buy from shops, and only 3 different types of materia, that being fire, lightning, and ice. You have the option of aiming your cursor on the screen like you would in a third-person shooter to shoot down enemies. You have another button that's mapped to your magic that you can launch. Vincent can run in one direction. He has a jump. He can dodge or strafe in that regard. And you're basically running through all of these locations, following the story until you make it to the end. And that's how you also do with boss fights. The problem is everything is bad. About everything I just described. It's not very good. I had the exact same experience, Dennis, what you described from when you first tried to get into it. Before I even played Final Fantasy in 2019, I gave Dirge of Cerberus a shot because I thought it looked cool. I put the game down and I didn't even get past the first level in calm. I didn't even get that far into the game. I was like, wow, I'm not into this. So I put this thing away and I didn't touch it for 2 years. Well, 3 years actually, because I just played it last year for the first time.
Okay.
Since I love I played it like early 2022. I played Dirge of Cerberus for the first time. Not a very good game, all in all. The big problem with Dirge of Cerberus is the story is very basic. Deep Ground are some of the worst villains I've ever seen in an RPG. They're so bland, they're boring. There was no knowledge of them or mention of them up to that point in the Final Fantasy series. Every single main member that they try and bring into it, whether it be Rosso the Crimson, who's just the stereotypical like bloodthirsty general who wants to kill everyone. You have Nero the Sable, who's this guy he's in a straitjacket with like giant wings, an oddball design, and all he does is help out his brother, who's actually possessed by Hojo's consciousness. Apparently, yeah, who's still somehow he uploaded his consciousness into the Midgard computer database at the end of 7 before he died. And he's secretly manipulating Deep Ground to resurrect Omega for his own reasons. And that was, I don't know. It's really bad. The execution. These are some of the worst villains I've seen in a video game. They're so bland, they're boring, they're generic. I'm not a fan of Deep Ground at all. They try and give Vincent a love interest as well, with Shulk. Who's like this young girl who had her emotions removed at a young age. She's actually like 18 years old or so, but she looks like 10. And there's some problems with that. But they try and put her and Vincent together as Shulk gets her emotions back slowly over time, and she realizes how Deep Ground's evil and all that. And yeah, the story is not very good. I mean, they do bring back some of the characters, like they bring back Sid, Yuffie, and everybody else. They do play a role in the story, which that's what I like. I like the fan service. Cloud, Barrett, and Tifa, their cameo appearances, they have like 2 lines apiece. Cloud literally shows up for like 2 scenes in the game, and they like last like 5 seconds each. Same thing with Tifa and Barrett. And they have like 3 voice lines on like a phone call giving Vincent words of encouragement before he goes and takes out Deep Ground. So
that's such a waste.
It is such a waste. Absolutely, it was. I mean, Square, your cool CG cutscenes cannot make up for everything, and it did not make up for the waste that was most of the Final Fantasy cast. Kate Sith, or Ket Shi, however you want to call him, has a bigger role in this game than anyone else, like Cloud.
Well, you got to throw in the mascot character somehow.
Yeah, of course. That's true, too. They do. I would say. I'm going to say, gosh, yeah. Dirge has so many issues that I could go over, and I don't want to drag this out anymore because people have bashed Dirge Cerberus so much on the internet already. The controls are bad. The gameplay is boring. You're just shooting and gunning people down. The visuals of the game, after a while, each environment looks the same. The story has some very terrible villains that don't really add any substance or anything else. The game is structured poorly. The magic system isn't fully realized. You can only equip like 2 or 3 things of armor that you get throughout the game. Vincent has like 3 different guns that he can use. He has his Cerberus pistol. He has a sniper rifle. He has a shotgun, which I think is called his Hydra, I believe it's called. So he does, right. Yeah. he has options, but they all function the same. This is just a very bland and boring game. Dirge of Cerberus I like more than what I should. I'm not a huge fan of Final Fantasy VIII either, mainly for gameplay and very bland story issues. But it is a better, well put together game than Dirge of Cerberus is. So I'm going to go with Dirge of Cerberus being my least favorite Final Fantasy game. Period.
I can see that. One of the things is that that was also about the era where Squeenix decided that they were going to do all sorts of experimentation, because
exactly,
I mean, the golden era of RPGs, quite honestly, was mid to late 90s into the early 2000s. I mean, they had the summer of RPGs on that Sony was really pushing. That's when we got things like Vagrant Story, Threads of Fate. I think Brave Fencer Musashi about that time as well. And Square Enix was like really trying their best to figure out what they wanted to do, because they can make Final Fantasy all day long, but that's one property, and you can't put all your eggs in one basket, especially as we found out with later installments like 13, 15. People have been like, I've seen both sides on 16. I just started playing it not too long ago, and I mean, I'm enjoying it. So as long as you're enjoying a game, you win. That's how I look at it.
Exactly.
But
I would say, I'm sorry, go ahead.
I have another relic to present to you.
Sure.
This is their first attempt at a fighting game.
Energies, yes, we talked about this in that first. I think that episode we did on your show. Actually, you mentioned Energies.
Or I'm not even sure how to pronounce it.
I've heard it pronounced. I know with God Bless the Ring. That part I can pronounce in that title, but I know Energies. I actually did a little research into it after we talked about it. From what I understand, this isn't everyone. If you're seeing the title and or if you're seeing the cover here in the video and whatnot, and you're seeing Cloud on the front. No, Cloud is. This isn't a Final Fantasy game. This is a fighting game.
Nope.
It features Final Fantasy VII characters, but it's not an RPG. You want to describe it a little bit, Dennis? Because I actually don't know much about like the story or anything else about it.
It's the story. The framework of the story is that there is a tournament and there is some kind of relic that you are trying to get, but each character has their own reasons for it. You have one character where his leg mysteriously just disappears in a cloud of smoke, and so now he's got a robot leg. One of his moves is he shoots a rocket out of his kneecap, which is kind of weird. I mean, it's kind of like a Tekken clone in a lot of sense, because it's a 3D fighter. This one you can jump around and everything. Characters like Cloud and Sephiroth, you have to draw their sword, and it's like a couple of actions to draw the sword in order to use it. And then when you get knocked down, it's like they put their sword away. So that was just weird. I was better with Tifa. She had some pretty good combos and everything. One of the strange things with the Final Fantasy characters, though, is that every other fighter got a CGI cutscene for their finale. Like you beat the game and you see what happens to them after the tournament. The only one that got one was Sephiroth, and it was basically they reused stuff from 7 with the One Winged Angel song.
I guess Square can steal from themselves, I guess.
Yeah, and it was a very weird game. They also added in a dungeon crawler where it's kind of like a side story. While this is all going on, these are 2 explorer characters that are delving into this dungeon, and this is where the relic is kept. So you can equip different weapons and armor. You can collect food. Eating certain foods gives you certain stat bonuses. And it was a weird hodgepodge that they threw together. It's like they were trying to be Tekken. It didn't sell very well, but I mean, it's still a fun game if you're able to play it.
Right. I mean, I've never seen a copy of Energies out in the wild. I'm just going to say the Square Enix fighting game featuring Final Fantasy VII characters. So no one gets upset at me for pronouncing it wrong. Whatever, Energies. So Energies, I've never seen out in the wild. But from what I understand, it's a more valuable and rare Square like fighting game, especially with like the Final Fantasy inclusion with like guest characters involved in that regard. So, I mean, hold on to that copy there, Dennis. Make sure no one breaks in your house and steals that after this. Now that you've unveiled it to the world, of course.
They'll be met with my dog. They won't like that.
It's my energy. You can't have it.
Yes.
But that's yeah, that's an interesting piece of Square memory. Like because this whole thing's about this. It's not just about Final Fantasy, because there's a lot more to Square than Final Fantasy. They've made a ton of games, they've made a lot of series, and they have quite a reputation nowadays. In fact, one thing I'll show you here, since you showed me a cool relic, I'll show all of you guys here this. This is not the rarest, but this is one of the biggest pieces of Final Fantasy VII memorabilia I own. This is Cloud on Fender from Advent Children. This is a big box I ordered off of Amazon. As you can see here, this is the Advent Children Cloud on Fenrir, and I'll show you guys the back here. I did a video on the Nostalgia Factor kind of showing some of this stuff in detail, but this thing is huge. I bought this thing on Amazon 2 years ago when I started up a Final Fantasy VII collection because I love the game so much. But I collect other pieces of like Square Enix, like RPG memorabilia too along the way, mainly revolving around Final Fantasy and some Chrono Trigger pieces I picked up here and there, which this is my second favorite game of all time as well. But this is definitely the biggest piece in my collection outside of the Extra Knights box set that was from 1998. That is the rarest thing I own in this collection. So this thing here, when I got it from Amazon, I was expecting this to be a very quick and easy thing to display. It is not. It is huge. I have a very specific spot I keep on a stack of PS2 games over here because I don't really have the shelf space to put it up as of right now. But that's a piece of rare Square Enix merchandise that I currently have. I actually have quite a bit here. I don't know. Do you have anything, Dennis? Have you collected any merchandise or memorabilia from any of the games or Square or anything?
I don't know where it is, but I did have an art book for Xenogears, and this gives like extra background information on like the world, the characters. It's all in Japanese, so I can't read it. My brother was able to translate a bunch of it since he lives in Japan, but just amazing stuff in there.
Wow.
I have gotten a few soundtracks, so like I got this spiffy one for Theatrhythm.
Ooh.
But that came with my game. And then this version of Final Fantasy 12 Steel Case.
I have that one too.
Yeah. So I mean, I got a couple of special editions, but for the most part, I don't really have like some of that other stuff. It's a lot of soundtracks for the most part, like Parasite Eve and things like that.
I can give you some advice. Unless you're dedicated to that type of collection, save your money, because I can assure you none of this is cheap. All of this has cost me some money to get. I do it because when it comes to like my disposable game fund income, whatever you want to call it, I mainly invested in games that I really genuinely like or love if I'm going to collect like merchandise or memorabilia from it. And I've spent the past 2 years collecting stuff from Final Fantasy. The problem is Square Enix, for some of their games, they never really made anything for certain games. Chrono Trigger, for example, there is very little merchandise they ever made for those. I do have, if you can see back here, that is a framed poster back there of, it's a custom poster someone made of all the party members standing on Epoch above Guardian 1000 AD. And that over there next to it is the art Terror on the Magitech armor in Vector from Final Fantasy VI. I also have framed up here. Right next to me, I have the biggest poster I have. It's the entire cast of Final Fantasy VI and some fan art somebody made, also framed up by me. The frame jobs are not cheap, but they are quality.
Yes.
But I've been doing stuff like that on and off because I genuinely have come to love these games. And a lot of the merchandise that I currently have is pretty much from all Square Enix properties or Squaresoft back in the day. I think the rarest piece of merchandise I have, period, and I did a video on this on the Nostalgia Factor as well, that I have a Kingdom Hearts 2 store display that came out years ago.
I saw the pictures.
Did you? Yeah. That thing is huge. Here's a height reveal. If I've never revealed this on the channel, I am 5'9" or almost 5'10". That thing is taller than I am. It is huge, and it was not cheap. I spent out of pocket $230 for that thing. It was originally going for $400. Thanks to some trade-ins, I whittled the price down. I'm gonna pay $230 for it. And it is currently down into a place I'm going into later on, but it is currently down there, so I can't show it to all you guys. And I did the video on it, so if you want to go check out the whole thing, guess you can check out the video. Shameless plug aside. But that's probably the rarest thing of like video game merchandise in my collection or game merchandise period that I own from, especially concerning Square Enix, because those things are just rare and hard to find. I mean, I had the opportunity to buy a Final Fantasy 12 disc rack display. It's a yay high display where they stored copies of Final Fantasy 12 when it actually came out. That thing was only $100, but that very night that the local game store chain near me posted it, someone bought it. So that and a Super Mario Galaxy display, somebody bought that too. So yeah, but nonetheless, though, I managed to get a hold of, I think, the coolest or best one. But that kind of leads me to something else. Since we're going like into more obscure Square stuff in that regard, because again, they're more than just Final Fantasy. Dennis, is there any obscure game you wanted to talk about while we were on stream today that Square produced, or like unusual game that maybe people either don't know about, or like you'd be surprised if Square Enix actually developed this? Because I have one myself. One that you may not believe that Square made anyway.
Well, I mean, you and I briefly talked about the Parasite Eve games in private chat and everything, and that was Squeenix's attempt at doing kind of a Resident Evil clone. And one of the things is that Resident Evil 1 had those weird tank controls where, like, your character's kind of walking and then turning.
Yeah.
And I hated those controls back then. It drove me absolutely bonkers. But when it came to Parasite Eve, it was just like when you move the left stick, you're moving to the left, you're moving to the right. It's just like, I like the controls a lot better. And it was also, they built it as a cinematic horror game, which at the time it had the most cinematics that they had produced for a game. And it follows a story of a police officer that encounters this woman who has paranormal abilities tied to mitochondria within her cells. She's able to mutate creatures. She's able to spontaneously combust people. The main character, Aya Bray, she is immune to all these powers for whatever reason. First game, you got to play through 6 days in New York, progressively getting harder and harder, of course. Different dungeons, which are just different locales. You got like a hospital. You got Central Park. I've actually been to Central Park this year, so I can tell you that they were pretty close with some of the locales in the game.
That's pretty cool, actually.
One of the things that was really nice is this was also one that they decided to throw in New Game Plus. So weapons and armor that you had, you could carry over stats, you could carry over effects onto these different weapons and armor and name them. That piece carried over to your next playthrough. So you're starting the game with stronger weapons and stronger armor. And you can continuously do New Game Plus with this weapon and this armor and add more stats to it. I had a handgun that was more powerful than like 4 rocket launchers combined by the time I got done. But what they did with that was it also prepared you to go into the Chrysler building where they had random floor generation and different bosses in there. So like you might run into a couple of things that you fought before, but in the higher floors, you're fighting different versions of Eve, the main bad guy, mutated cockroaches, things like that. And beating the Chrysler building kind of gives you what would probably be considered the true ending of the game in terms of why is Aya able to defeat Eve? Why is she able to stand up to Eve? How is she able to resist the powers?
Like what makes this character so special that she can avoid being like destroyed or controlled by these abilities, and how can she survive any of this?
Exactly. Well, the ending that you get just from beating the game, they do explain it a little bit, but this one is a little bit more in depth, and they don't just take the easy way out. I mean, it is an ending when you beat the game traditionally without going New Game Plus, but it does fall into that horror kind of ending in terms of like it's an ending, but it seems pretty dark. And I don't want to spoil it for anyone because I'm holding out hope that at the very least they'll re-release it onto like the Switch or PlayStation Plus or something.
Please do it.
Yeah, at least the first 2. We can forget Third Birthday because that was a complete departure. I was actually
thinking about that because I watched reviews in the past. There's this really good YouTuber that she doesn't need the shout out, but she's someone who's about 500,000 subscribers at this point. There's this the Sphere Hunter, or Susie, as she's also known on the internet. She is a huge fan of like RPGs, survival horror games, Resident Evil, that kind of thing. And she did these really good in-depth reviews of the Parasite Eve series. That's kind of how I got an idea of what Parasite Eve was like a few years ago. Because she reviewed the first game, the second game, and she absolutely hated the third birthday as well. Thought it completely ruined the legacy of Parasite Eve in the direction that they took characters. They changed the gameplay up. The story was abominable. Apparently, from what I saw in the video, it was just a mess. And it was nothing like the first two Parasite Eve games either. It wasn't like this RPG survival horror mashup. Rather, it was like this third-person action shooter with maybe very loose RPG mechanics. Basically, Third Birthday bombed quite a bit in the eyes of a lot of fans. The reception on it, I'm not sure. I know that they sold quite a few copies. I don't think it sold as well as the first two games did anyway. Because the Parasite Eve series from Square Enix, from what I understand, like the first game did really well. It was something new, good storyline, good unique gameplay. People really liked it. The second game, the storyline wasn't as good, but the gameplay mechanics were more refined in that regard. The Third Birthday, nobody remembers that thing on the PSP. Everyone chooses to forget it exists, and we just say there's two Parasite Eve games. We pretend there's no third one. So, have you actually played Third Birthday, Dennis, by any chance? Because I never have.
I pre-ordered it because I had no idea what I was getting. Well, on the bright side, it did. It came with like this cool costume for Lightning in Dissidia Duodecim, so I at least got that out of the deal.
That's something.
Yeah, but I played through it. I managed to beat it. I'm not really good at those kinds of games, but I managed to beat it. It was pretty simplistic. The only positive thing I can really say about it is the soundtrack. It's got remixes of some of the old themes, and it's got a pretty good soundtrack. But in terms of like, Aya was one of the 90s generation action hero heroines. I mean, she started off a little unsure, but she gradually became just a badass. Like she was confident. She became stronger. She was able to, take care of business, and she did it on her own. And in this one, it's like they just completely wiped that away. They destroyed her as a person, and they made her just fragile. They made her just weak. And it's not even like, a power thing. It was like personality wise, total departure of the character. It's like
that sounds about right, actually. Like the reason why fans were so upset when this new installment of what started off as a more obscure Square Enix franchise completely derailed a lot of the characters that were in there that people really enjoyed from the first two games, like Aya, for example, being like the lead character of this series that people fell in love with the first two games. And then here comes along this third game where her character is absolutely decimated. And then everything that the series stood for was just tossed out the window in favor of this really erotic, just gross depiction of so many different characters and people. Which I don't know why Square took that direction with Third Birthday. Maybe they were trying to appeal to a new generation of gamers. Maybe they thought that RPGs of that era, like Parasite Eve 1 and 2, didn't work anymore. I really don't know. But I do know this. Third Birthday absolutely bombed. And to this day, from my knowledge anyway, there has not been a new Parasite Eve game that is released since Third Birthday. So,
yeah, they kind of killed the series at that point. I mean, there is a possibility they could look to bring it back, but they would have to explore if people are willing to give it a try.
Exactly.
I feel that's how they've done a lot of other games. Shameless plug for mobile games. I play a lot of mobile games because my phone is more of a device to play games than it is an actual phone.
Right.
But one of the games that I've played is Brave Exvius, and that's a Final Fantasy gacha game where original story, original characters in there, but the draw is that you can bring in different versions of beloved Final Fantasy characters, and they have been branching out beyond that, and they brought in Xenogears characters. Every time they have that banner up or they have that event up, it's just like everyone's excited within like the Facebook groups and online. It's like, all right, I'm going to get this character, and I'm going to be able to get this character and everything. So I think that they kind of use some of these other mediums to test the waters to see if people would like to see some of these other kind of forgotten franchises brought back.
Right. And that'd be actually pretty cool to see, especially a lot of these old games or series that Square Enix they've made games for, they developed in the past, but they just kind of dropped in the years that they've been achieving more success with, like Final Fantasy still going, obviously, but they've been working on a ton of other games over the past several years. But some of their IPs have just been left behind, and that kind of led into the game that I was gonna like mention here as well, about a game that, because Dennis mentioned a more obscure series that Square Enix worked on with Parasite Eve, which is a good series overall, and a game that people have heard of but may not know Square Enix made, because I didn't, was Super Mario RPG. That is one game that Square Enix developed for Nintendo before the whole Final Fantasy VII fiasco, with moving away from like cartridge-based systems and going to Sony. But they developed Super Mario RPG, and I had no idea about that until I watched some reviews of it, because there's a remake of it coming out as of right now in October, I believe, of 2 months, 2 more months, and the Super Mario RPG remake will be upon us. But I had no idea that Square Enix.
I screamed like a little girl when I saw that. I was so excited. That's another one of my favorites, because like after 7, I did go back and play some of the older stuff like Chrono Trigger, some of the earlier Final Fantasies. I love Mario RPG. It's just so well done, and that's something like fans have been like screaming for this.
Probably for years at this point. And I looked into Super Mario RPG. It's, for those of you who don't know, if you like Mario, if you like the platformers, if you like any of the other games they branched off into, Super Mario RPG still incorporates platforming into a turn-based RPG game. It is probably one of the easiest RPGs, or a baby's first RPG kind of thing, if you want to refer to it that way. Because if you are someone who is hesitant to get into this genre, Super Mario RPG takes beautiful visuals. It takes all the classic characters from the Mushroom Kingdom, Bowser, Toadstool, she's referred to in the game. You have Bowser, Mario. Luigi makes a brief cameo appearance at the end of the game. And they chuck into this different version of Mushroom Kingdom with different locations, different characters, and just a bizarre plot involving getting back these 7 star pieces across the entire Mushroom Kingdom to take out this group called the Smitty Gang, who are from a completely different world, and they're here to take over the Mushroom Kingdom. And the opening shot is of a literal giant sword just going through Bowser's castle and just splitting it in 2. And then you have to spend the entire journey as Mario teaming up with Peach or Toadstool, Bowser, and some new characters like Geno, which I don't think anyone's ever mentioned wanting this character in any other media, like Smash Brothers or anything, right? I don't think anyone's ever mentioned Geno before.
A few people have. A few people wouldn't have minded seeing Geno in Smash Brothers. And I don't know if maybe they added like some pieces for your Mii character in Ultimate, but that might have been it.
Yeah, and Geno's very popular. So Geno, and then
Mallow.
The Mallow, is that his name? The cloud kid who thinks he's a frog for some reason, which I don't know why. But you take all these characters together and you just go on this ridiculous journey across the Mushroom Kingdom in an effort to basically stop the Smitty Gang and get back the star pieces. And this is a very easy game, I will say. If you're someone who's afraid of getting into the RPG genre, and you're afraid, oh no, the equipment customization, the grinding, the random encounters, just to experience the story or explore around, do not worry in Super Mario RPG, because this game is extremely easy to get into and to play. People very much enjoy this game for that reason. Every single character that you have has different quirks, different abilities, etc., etc. And it's just a fun time to go around. I mean, heck, there's even like a Wario lookalike that wants to marry Peach at one point in the game, but he ends up in a giant cake. He doesn't even know what marriage is. I mean, it's all sorts of stupid, dumb, funny scenarios within this game. It's an entertaining and fun story. It's extremely easy. You'll like the characters if you're into Mario. It's a good story. And all in all, it's just a really good experience. And Square Enix had the chance to make this game because it released back in 1994 on the Super Nintendo. Of course, fast forward like 2 years after that, Super Mario 64 came out, and people kind of forgot about Super Mario RPG. But nonetheless, though, it's still a good game, and it's a good Mario game, and I really like what I've seen of it. And it's definitely deserving of a full-blown remake coming out on the Switch here soon. So, I mean, Dennis, you've actually played the game, though. Do you have any good experiences with it? Like, good things to say, bad things to say, or
how much time do we have? My gosh.
We still got some time. Don't worry about that one.
No, one of the things that I really enjoy about it is that it has some of the most unusual weapons for a video game that you have. Peach you don't think of her as a fighter. She's more of a magic user, like your support character.
That was like your brute or like strength type, for example, too.
Oh yeah, but she gets things like she gets a frying pan, and it just like when you hit a character, it just goes pong, and then later on she'll get like a glove, and she just walks up and she just goes whack whack whack, and the coolest thing about it is like you can time the hits. So if you time the hit just as it's about to connect with the enemy,
it deals more
does
damage
criticals.
Too.
Yeah. And that was something that they carried over into the Mario and Luigi series with like that they had on like the DS and things
I've actually
like that.
played them.
Oh, they're so much fun.
Yes, they are.
Yeah, and like you said, it's very simplistic. Mario has all of his classic moves. He's got jump moves, and again, it's like timing. So if you can get the timing right, you can jump on enemies multiple times and do massive amounts of damage. Bowser actually gets a chain chomp that he throws at enemies, and it just like starts chewing on them. So I mean, it's just overall they took the fun of Mario and they just added an extra level to it and really made it fun.
That's just fantastic to hear about. And again, this is the reason they brought this game up in the first place isn't because nobody knows it exists. I mean, it was made by a popular company. It's a Mario game, one of probably the biggest video game series in the world. But it's the fact that Square Enix made this game. They took what was a classic platformer for Mario, and they made it, and he's branched off into so many things, sports games, racing, anything you can think of, a Mario game's probably out about it. But they took that and they took the RPG formula that they were so very well known for. They combined a platforming mascot like Mario, and they made a good game out of it. And that's something that is just absolutely fantastic that Super Mario RPG should be 100% remembered for. And that is why it is so deserving of the remake coming out. And probably why fans like you, Dennis, for example, were so excited when Nintendo announced that. Because finally they're bringing all of these old games or these old IPs out of the closet, and they're finally bringing them out into the mainstream for people like even me. I've never played the game, but I am looking forward to playing it. And that's the brilliant thing about that. And that's why Square, as they've evolved over time, they've even set a legacy to games that they don't have any control over anymore. Because they don't have the rights to Super Mario RPG, to my knowledge. I think it's a completely different company that's remaking the game in the first place. So
that might be a thing where they're still giving them royalties or something like that.
And that might be the case too. Because to be fair, Nintendo and Square back in the 90s, they did enter like an agreement of sorts where Nintendo let them use their IP, but Square ended up making the game the way that they wanted to. Probably with coaching from Nintendo. But they did make it to like a fully fleshed out RPG. So who knows really in that one. But that's the reason why I brought Super Mario RPG up in the first place. Definitely not an obscure one, but it's still a cool one. There was something else I wanted to ask you too, Dennis, concerning Square Enix. For those of you who don't know too, Square Enix, they were known as Squaresoft back in the 80s and 90s. They made a ton of different video games, but eventually they ran into some financial troubles. Basically, after a certain Final Fantasy movie flopped, The Spirits Within, which is probably one of the worst pieces of Final Fantasy media out there, period. It flopped terribly. Yeah. Square gambled on this movie, and they lost a lot of money. They needed cash, and they knew that their company needed to stay afloat. So they combined with another famous RPG company called Enix in the early 2000s, which I believe Final Fantasy X was either the last game under the Squaresoft logo or the first game under the Square Enix logo. But they combined in the early 2000s together. I'm not sure which one, to be honest, but they combined together and they ended up creating an entirely new company called Square Enix. So that was probably the biggest thing there for them. But since they did that, now they have access to all of these new IPs or all these new games. So my question for you then, Dennis, is there any game, like, is there any notable series that you're looking forward to or like ones that you really like that Square now have thanks to Enix?
Well, I'll be honest that when they became Squeenix, and I still think that was a missed opportunity. They should have gone Squeenix, not Square.
I agree. Enix. It's a much funnier name.
Oh yeah, and it sticks in your mind a bit better. Yeah. But one of the things is that this was also the first time that I was introduced to Dragon Quest, and I I hadn't known about Dragon Quest until 8 came out because I wanted to play the demo that came with it for Final Fantasy 12. But I started playing this. I'm looking at this going, this art style looks very familiar to me. And lo and behold, it's Akira Toriyama, the creator of Dragon Ball and the artist for Chrono Trigger. So I started playing through all of those, and it's like, wow, this is a really good series. I've been missing out. So I've been steadily working my way through some of the Dragon Quests when I have the time.
That's interesting, actually. I never really got into the Dragon Quest games. I do have one of them on the PS2. It's the one that came with the Final Fantasy 12 demo disc. It was Dragon Quest, I think, 8? Yep. 8, Journey of the Cursed King, I believe it's called.
Yes.
Which I do have. I do want to play it, but the only thing that's holding me back currently is the runtime for the story. Apparently, it takes you 50 to 60 hours to beat. That's a long time for one game, even if it's an RPG. So maybe I'll give it a shot sometime. I do like a lot of things about it. Like the visuals look really good too. It's basically like Chrono Trigger visuals, but in 3D and a completely different cast and world, basically. So I am curious on the Dragon Quest games. The series for me that sticks out is Star Ocean. That's actually the series that because Enix, one of their biggest IPs was Star Ocean. And when Square acquired them, they released a ton of new Star Ocean games from the PS1 days. I actually have one right here I could even show you. This is like one of their major collaborations together. This was Till the End of Time on the PS2. And this was something that was considered to be a huge deal because Square, now that Enix had access to a lot of Square's properties, or like their resources rather, they were able to create these elaborate 3D RPGs that took place with combining science fiction and fantasy together in order to create these intricate storylines. The first experience I ever had was actually Second Story on the PS1. I bought it at my retro game store chain, and from what I gather, the original Star Ocean Second Story was so popular. People really liked it for the storyline, for the visuals, for all the extra stuff that you could do, like mugging people, exploring around, the customization, like everything this game brought to the table, that it too is also getting a remake, Star Ocean Second Story RE, or something along those lines. But it's releasing later
soon, right?
Yeah, it is. I think it's releasing at the time of this stream anyway. I think it's coming out October, November. I think it might be October, but it's coming out here like 2 months roughly. They basically took the art style of Octopath Traveler, and that's what they used for the remake. Because the original PS1 game for Second Story looks nothing like what the remake does. I think it looks better with the remake. The remake visuals look amazing. The character portraits, the visuals, the backgrounds, the battles themselves, they look fantastic. And it is definitely something that I would want to try out and get my hands on, because the art style alone blew me away. It interested me enough to actually want to play the game officially. But for me, I always go to Star Ocean when it comes to like the Enix side of things. It's the one I'm more familiar with.
Okay. Yeah, like I said, Dragon Quest was what I found out about with Enix, because it was a company that I had just completely slept on because I didn't pay attention to them. But yeah,
that would explain on that one too, because not a lot of people knew about some of these older RPGs or intellectual properties or anything like that. So that would explain there too. Those are just some of the more obscure games there too. I did have a section here where I came up with some critical Final Fantasy questions to ask Dennis, and that I will also answer, because we've talked quite a bit about Square as a company, some of their history, other properties, their big merger with Enix, and some of their properties. But I do have some essential questions that every Final Fantasy fan has an opinion on, or that would like to give their 2 cents on. So Dennis, if you have an opinion on some of these, and here's your chance to present them here on stream, depending on what you think, of course. All right,
okay,
let's see. Getting a Final Fantasy stretches going here. It's the hard questions.
I'm also first an old man. So I'm falling apart.
It's not because he's getting ready, it's just arthritis.
Yeah.
But all right, first question there, Dennis. Is Final Fantasy 13 bad? Do you enjoy the game at all, or is it indeed the worst mainline Final Fantasy game?
It's not.
The hesitation.
It is not terrible. I would say it's mediocre.
Okay, that's a fair answer.
My problem with 13 is that I think they were trying to turn Lightning into Girl Cloud, and it just didn't work.
No.
The paradigm system wasn't bad. I hated that the first time you used it, it just, it interrupted the fight, and then every time after that, it was just a quick change, which really screwed with a lot of my strategies when I was trying to do stuff. I wish there was a little bit more exploration, not explanation. Probably some more explanation, because I was so lost on what the hell they were trying to do with the story.
Exactly.
I enjoyed the sequels a bit more than the original. It was just weird that 13, it was like 13.2 and 13.3. And it's like, why didn't some of these other games get sequels? I mean, like, I know 10 got their Charlie's Angels kind of,
oh God,
but I found it passable. It's not great. It's not one that I'm eager to go back to.
Right. Guys, I swear I'm not copying his answer. I 100% agree with Dennis on this one. I don't think Final Fantasy 13 is the worst game ever, nor do I think it's the worst Final Fantasy game. Honestly, this one, for as much as I don't care for a lot of things in 13, Dirge of Cerberus still cannot be topped for admittedly the most mediocre or worst Final Fantasy game, spinoff and mainline. Mainline game-wise, I actually think 8 might be a worse game than 13. Mainly because 13, it's mediocre, to be honest, like more than anything. I tried playing 13 last year, and I could not, the first ever attempt, I could not get past I can't even remember now, the mission where like that rebel group is fighting off securities in Cocoon. And they mention like a bunch of these terms like fal'Cie, l'Cie. They mention all of these things, and I know the story of 13. I know what these terms mean, but they throw them around so much in a boring and bland intro with a very, very not even passable battle system or enemy encounter rate with Discount Barrett, or Zaz, as he's also known. But none of it makes any sense. The story is not very interesting. The battle system and the paradigm shifts aren't very interesting either. I didn't find the cast to be memorable really in any way. Stuff just kind of happens in this story. And I know a lot of people argue with 13 that the game, I don't mind linearity in RPGs. I enjoyed 10, and that game is pretty much all linear. Yeah. Like, you travel from area to area, and that's it. You don't even get an airship until the very end of the game. But 13 does the same approach, and I don't mind that. What I do mind, though, because, again, the argument goes back to after like 20 to 30 hours, the game opens up when you finally get down to the planet itself beneath Cocoon. That's when the game opens up and everything else. I don't mind the linearity, but I like it if it's done well. And it wasn't, I don't think, in 13. The locations weren't very interesting. The dialogue and the characters themselves do not carry the story. It's so confusing with all these terms and things that they throw out that I just could not connect with this world. I feel invested, like games like 7 and 10, like I felt invested in those worlds. I genuinely cared about the characters. I wanted to see more of the story. I was willing to put up with even the BS side quest in 10 and all the other stuff that you got to put up with Blitzball in the early section. I was willing to put up with that because I enjoyed the game. It was so good. 13 doesn't have the same effect. 13 is not a bad game, but it is extremely mediocre. I do agree with Dennis on that one too. Now the sequels, I don't know. But 13 as a game, no, not very good. No, I do not think it is. No.
Well, and 13.2 is basically like Final Fantasy Pokemon, because one of your party members is Monster that you have captured.
And Square, stop trying to do everything.
This is also where they leaned really heavily into doing DLC, and I think they got a taste for it, because they started throwing out DLC where you could recruit Gilgamesh, you could recruit Staz, you could recruit all these different monsters and characters to your team, but you're paying the extra $5 or whatever for it.
Yeah.
At least with 13, it's very memeable. Someone actually did a compilation of all the inappropriate noises Vanille makes throughout the first game, which just watching that is at least hilarious. Because
it's something.
How old are you, and why are you doing this?
All very, very good questions that Square will probably never talk about.
It's locked away in the Squeenix vault.
Basically, it'll never be released.
Exactly.
I'd be curious to kind of see that. Okay, so that's basically just the 13 on that one. I mean, 13 as a whole, you could nitpick it all you want, but at the end of the day, it still sold well, so it gave Square Enix money, and that's what mattered most at the end of the day. So question number 2, Dennis, a hardcore Final Fantasy question. Do you think that Kefka from Final Fantasy VI was the best villain in the Final Fantasy series itself? If not, who is the best villain?
I will say that I believe Kefka is the best villain, and I will tell you why. He is the first one to succeed in destroying the world.
I agree with you, 100%.
Yeah, I think the next one that succeeded might have been Caius Ballard from 13-2. I could be mistaken.
I think you're right.
I believe those two are the first 2 villains that actually succeeded in destroying the world.
Yeah. Because one thing that I absolutely loved about, because 6 is one of my favorite games of all. It's my 3rd favorite game of all time. I absolutely love Final Fantasy VI. It's such a good game. Like everything about it, from the story, the visuals, the music. Like this is going to sound like repetitive with these games and these RPGs, but it's true. I mean, like 6 has done so well. It has so many cool and funny moments. Like Sabin suplexing the freaking Phantom Train has been memed terribly from the game, but it's a good moment. I mean, you got stuff like that. You have the big twist ending at the end where Kefka does succeed, and the world of balance becomes the world of ruin and all that stuff, too. Like 6 in the opera scene, for example, from 6 with Celis was really cool and revolutionary at the time. Considering this game came out in 1994. That was even before the days of Final Fantasy VII or half of other Square's masterpieces. But 6 is just an amazing game. Kefka is a villain who, he's not a god. He's not someone who has, he has magic from the Magitech experiments done on him through the Empire. But he's not a god. He's not a god. He's not like the warrior of destiny. He's not like the chosen evil to destroy the world or anything like that. He's a maniacal jester who just likes to kill people in brutal ways. He's just an awful and horrible person.
He's an opportunist.
Absolutely. And he takes advantage, and he does so many things throughout the game that are just evil and conniving. He just does it because he's mentally insane from the Magitech experiments. I mean, he sets Figaro Castle on fire. He poisons the people of Doma and kills Cyan's family. I mean, he just tries to destroy Thamaza. He kills a bunch of Espers and takes their Magicites simply just to gain more power. And one of the biggest sins was that he killed General Leo. I actually liked Leo as a side character in the game. So he killed him
to be on my team. I loved his character.
There was that theory running around for so long. Everyone's posting like these troll threads online. We're like, guys, we know how to bring General Leo back. There's a secret part of the game where you can resurrect General Leo and put him in your party. And so many people fell for it, and none of it was true. Guys,
first we got to resurrect Aerith. That's the first step right there.
Spoiler alert for 7. Sorry. But that guys, like, if you're a Final Fantasy fan or you're someone who's looking to play 6, you cannot bring General Leo back. I'm sorry, he's gone. But Kefka is just this horrible, despicable person, and when he finally does destroy the world by rearranging the statues and betrays Gestalt, who, by the way, is one of the most generic villains in all of Final Fantasy. He just shows up like 4 or 5 times in the game, and that's it. He doesn't play much of a role. He's just the Emperor. But Kefka kills him. He becomes the new god of magic, and Kefka wins. I mean, the world of ruin is basically you just assembling your party back together and then being like, okay, guys, we're together. Now let's go kill Kefka and, save what's left of the world. Because Kefka won. The world of ruin doesn't get restored back to the world of balance afterwards. This is the new world that you're in now. This is the new world map. The locations are rearranged. There's all these these monsters and bosses that are now out in the world that were released when Kefka destroyed it. Like, Kefka won. The major part of the world of ruin is it's a redemption arc for the heroes to finally right some wrongs and finally stop Kefka and bring peace to this new world that they can now live in. But I think Kefka, I agree, is ultimately the best villain in Final Fantasy. And I know what some people watching this probably in the video are going to say, that Sephiroth is the most iconic villain in Final Fantasy and he's the best. Sephiroth might be the most iconic because of his appearance, but Sephiroth is a moron. He's not a very interesting villain in 7, and I love the game. But Sephiroth, he's iconic, he's cool, he's used better in other media, I think. But the only thing that he does is show up for real near the end of the game, and he decides because his mom is a space alien, and allegedly his mom is a space alien, and he doesn't like the way he was created, he's going to destroy the world with a meteor and become a god. That's it. That's his motives are really bad, and he doesn't even show up for real until the end anyway. Because the only thing you're fighting throughout about probably 90% of 7 are pieces of Genova, is what you're fighting. So Sephiroth, I feel like, is an extremely generic villain in the story. What I like about Sephiroth is a relationship with Cloud, but that doesn't mean he's a strong villain in game.
So there's a guy on YouTube called Rabtoons that did all the different Final Fantasies in a nutshell. And what he did with Sephiroth for 7 was the scene where he's in the library, Sephiroth's reading everything. It's like, okay, I know that I'm not just some monster. I'm a pretty cool dude. I don't have anything bad going in my life. Oh, there's another book. He picks it up. It's one of the Game of Thrones books. And then the next scene is Nibelheim on fire. He's like, damn you, Lannisters. I liked that character. And that is why he became a villain, was because of Game of Thrones. Which might have been a little more interesting.
Maybe. I think that would have been better than the reason we got. Because Sephiroth, like, Crisis Core establishes this very nicely, where Sephiroth, he's just this friendly, stoic dude who likes to keep to himself, but he does the right thing. He's friendly to the people he works with. He's generally a good guy. And he, fights for the good of people, even if he is working for Shinra. But he's not a saint or anything like that. He is still, don't get me wrong, he knows what he's doing. He knows Shinra's up to no good. But he's generally like a decent guy. But then he goes from being a decent person who you maybe just go grab a beer with at the bar or something like that occasionally. He's like that one coworker from work that you don't love, but you're like, yeah, he's fine, I guess, to being your boss when he threatens to fire you for not cleaning the bathroom properly. Because Sephiroth, in that regard, just completely snaps as soon as he gets to Nibelheim, or Nibelheim, however you want to pronounce it. And it just kind of goes downhill from there. So it really depends.
We might get some more background whenever Crisis releases.
Oh, yeah, that's a good point, too. It's like that younger teenage, maybe Sephiroth.
It's Sephiroth with short hair, and I don't like it.
No, I like his long, silver flowing hair. Yes. And his long sword, too. The Masamune is iconic. I will draw that. Exactly. It won't be me because I am no artist. I cannot draw to save my life. But nonetheless, I do agree with you, though. Kefka is the best one. The third one that I had here was actually concerning Final Fantasy VIII. And I mentioned this game a few times throughout the stream. And Dennis, you may have an idea of what I'm going to ask you. Did you like the level scaling, the junction system, and all the other gameplay innovations in 8? And if so, regardless if you liked it, or did you like it? What did you think of it? And should it be brought back for future Final Fantasy games?
So the level scaling I actually did enjoy, because I wanted to fight everything at its peak. So I had everyone at level 100. I'm fighting Omega at 100. And I don't know, that's just, it felt more of like an accomplishment to me.
Right.
In terms of the junction system, I thought that and the draw system were very broken, especially when you look at, like, if you just grind for an hour before even going to Ifrit's cave, you can have second tier magic available to you. So I didn't particularly care for that. I didn't like that if I wanted to use magic, I'm taking a hit to my stats. And so at that point, I just never used magic. I'm just relying on everyone just beat the crap out of everything, or limit breaks and things like that.
I mean, I'm not going to lie. When I first played Final Fantasy VIII, that's exactly what I did. I just drew a bunch of fire magic, and Squall ended up having crazy high attack for pretty much the entirety of the game. I was curious to see how it worked. I mean, I played 8 after I played 7, 10, 12, 9, and a few other games at that point. Dirge of Cerberus. Eventually I played Crisis Core. But, I mean, when it came to 8, I don't mind the system. The level scaling, I didn't even know the level scaling was in place, actually, until I got about halfway through the game. When I was grinding away at enemies, I had no idea. I don't mind the level scaling. I think it's honestly going to come down to a matter of opinion. If you prefer that kind of thing in your RPGs, if you prefer being overpowered and just grinding traditionally against enemies, or you prefer going for like low-level challenge runs, or you want to make the game harder for yourself by leveling up enemies, same as you. I think that's honestly a matter of preference. The draw system is basically the grinding in this game. If you, with the level scaling, take all of your grind time if you don't want to put your levels up, replace that with drawing magic from enemies. Because the way it works is, and you can miss certain magic in the game too, by the way, to junction to certain stats. How it works is you go up to an enemy, there's a feature on the menu called draw, and you draw different magic spells from different enemies you encounter throughout the game. You can use this magic normally, of course, but the catch is that it comes in numbers. So if you draw like 10 fire spells, for example, and you use 10 fire spells, you no longer have access to fire, meaning you're going to have to redraw that from either the same enemy or another enemy that has it. But what you're going to be doing most likely is not using that magic. You're going to junction it or attach it to your stats, your attack, your defense, your magic attack or magic defense, whatever. You're going to be using that to power your stats up. This system is broken. It is, like Dennis said, it is absolutely busted. If you want to, you can spend a few hours at the start of the game grinding, because your characters ultimately don't matter. Squall's the only one with a unique ability where if you press R1 before striking an enemy, his gun blade will do more damage when you strike an enemy. But everybody else, they're basically your skinwalker. They're basically your not skinwalkers. They're basically. I was trying to find a good way to say that you're basically playing as your summons, because your summons that you're using to draw the magic and you're junctioning to your stats, that's who you're playing as. Your party members are just kind of shells, so to speak, for the magic. Because each one of them
cutouts,
basically, yeah, both
you're
in
just
story,
kind of dragging them around.
Yeah, you're playing as the magic, you're playing as the stats, and you're playing as the summons. Because the characters, I'm just gonna say, 8 has the worst cast of characters in any Final Fantasy game I've played. I found them to be very bland and very generic, except for Laguna. I did like Laguna and his story. That was pretty good. But everybody else outside of Squall and maybe Renoa, not very interesting. Zell is one of the worst RPG characters I've ever seen in the Final Fantasy series. He's so bad. But nonetheless, the junction system, I think, is fine. I think it's definitely a more unique way of playing one of these Final Fantasy games, especially if you want to make yourself overpowered. Once again, I think it's going to come down to preference, though, when it comes to that kind of thing. So, but ultimately, I think it's going to depend. And should it be brought back for the Final Fantasy series? If they do in a different way, sure, because 8, that is the complete system. Each Final Fantasy game has a unique gameplay system it brings to the table. 10 has the turn chart and the party switching mechanics, 7 has materia, 8 has the junction system, 9 is just 9. It has a few unique things, but it's just basically it's a turn-based RPG. It's what you'd expect, which was the point when 9 came out.
Maybe learning the abilities from your equipment.
Exactly. Yeah, I think that would count as the unique gameplay feature.
Yeah.
But ultimately, I would say that's probably what it comes down to the most when it comes to it. It's just a matter of preference when it comes to 8. But yeah, I would say it's definitely a matter of preference, but it's not bad. It's a decent part of the game. Yeah. The fourth one, Dennis, and this is what I'm curious about, and this isn't solely a Final Fantasy game either.
Okay.
Do you like Chrono Trigger, which I think I know the answer to already? And if you do, which again, I already know the answer, do you think it is better than a lot of Final Fantasy games?
Yes and yes.
Wow, okay.
Well,
I agree with you, but still.
One of the unique things about Chrono Trigger at the time was that it had multiple endings. So you could, depending on where you fought Lavos, the final boss, you could have a completely different ending. It could be a good ending, it could be a bad ending. I think the true ending that you really wanted was after going through the Black Omen. That was the flying city, I think.
Every time.
Yep. And so, I mean, it was a very unique thing. Each character was very well fleshed out. You felt what they felt. They were really interesting designs. Again, Akira Toriyama's a really cool dude. The double and triple text, that was my bread and butter. I loved those. I wish that they had more of those in Chrono Cross when they brought that in, but I think they had like only a handful compared to every character seemed to have something that could link with each other, except for like Robo and Magus. But you even got access to a villain character who is now on your team, even if it's reluctantly. Overall, I just think it was a very unique and very well done game. If they ever brought it back, I don't know if I'd want them to bring it back with updated graphics or not. I think that part of the charm is because of the sprites.
Right. I 100% agree with you as far as the visual fidelity goes. Like Dennis got excited when I mentioned Super Mario RPG earlier on in the stream or the episode. I'm going to gush about Chrono Trigger for a minute here. I love this game very much. 7 might be my favorite game of all time, but I think Chrono Trigger is a far better game. And I know that's going to sound a little counteractive, because I love Chrono Trigger more as a game than 7. 7 has more of an emotional attachment for me. It was my first RPG seriously into the genre. I do think the cast of characters in the story are a little bit better than Chrono Trigger, but maybe by a hair. And that's the only reason why. They're very, very close. I know no video game out there is perfect. Each one of them you could point out what they do well and their flaws at the same time. But I've always gone by the opinion that Chrono Trigger for me is the perfect video game. I really don't have any issues with this game, which makes me extremely biased when I'm talking about if I think it's better than a lot of the Final Fantasy games. But I love Chrono Trigger. It's my second. If it wasn't for Final Fantasy VII, this would be my favorite game of all time. I love Chrono Trigger to death. The visuals of this game hold up so remarkably well when compared to other games like Final Fantasy VI. The fully fledged out sprite work, whether it be Chrono, Marl, Luca, any of the other party members that you come across. The vast locations that you go through with time, whether it be Guardia, the prehistoric ages, the future in 2300 AD, each one of them look fantastic in the overworld. Each place is detailed. It's full of hidden items. It's full of secrets and goodies. This game just looks absolutely amazing. The soundtrack is phenomenal.
Oh, yeah. Frog's theme.
Frog's theme is fantastic. Corridors of Time is also one of my favorite tracks in the game as well, which is the Zeal theme from 12,000 BC, which is absolutely amazing. I know I can't remember his name off the top of my head, but I
couldn't tell you.
the composer who was behind the music, that was his opportunity to work his way up the ladder at Square Enix to actually compose music full time. He worked himself to the bone so much with making Chrono Trigger's music that he put himself in the hospital. He got stomach ulcers. He worked so hard day and night because this was his golden opportunity. And this was the first game that he ever worked on seriously to compose music. And it paid off for him because he currently does the music for Xenogears, or for the Xenogears games that are out now. But he worked on Xenosaga. Yeah, he works on the music for the Xenosaga series currently. Okay. And he also worked on the Xenogears 2, actually. But he worked on a bunch of music for a lot of RPGs. But the music in this game is phenomenal. Love the music in Chrono Trigger. The battle system is the best RPG battle system I've ever played. It is quick. It is simple. The single, double, and triple tech system looks amazing with each of your party members in combination. Each one of them are extremely useful. You fight right there on the same area where you encounter the enemies, so no transition screen, no random encounters. You can pick and choose whether or not you run into an enemy to begin with. Grinding isn't even required in this game. Honestly, more people go grind for tech points than they do for experience points just to get new moves. This game is completely scaled. It's difficult at some points, especially like the Queen Zeal and the Lavos Gauntlet at the end of the Black Omen. That was one of the most intense gaming experiences I've ever had, because it took me over an hour to beat them. And I knew if you lose even one part of that, because Lavos has like 5 or 6 different phases. Queen Zeal has like 3. If you lose any of them, you have to start at the beginning again. So it was definitely very intense. It was a good gaming memory, definitely from like a few years ago. But the boss fights in this game are absolutely amazing. I love the story, the time travel themes, all the cool little details that they include with time travel in this game. How every single event that happens on this planet and in this world is directly because of your party's like interference in the timeline, trying to take down Lavos. You want to know why Magus disappeared after attempting to summon Lavos? Your party was there to stop him. You want to know why certain events happen in your world, period? It's because of Chrono and party. You want to know why that the gurus were scattered through time, why the Masamune sword exists for Frog, or why it's in 600 AD? It's because Chrono and party went and blew up the Mamun machine in 12,000 BC when Zeal collapsed. They include all these cool time travel details, and it is absolutely amazing. Square really pulled out all the stops, and they brought in the Dream Team, the best people at that time possible to work on this amazing and beloved game that was handcrafted with heart and passion. They brought in Akira Toriyama for the artwork. They brought in I know Masato Kato, he also worked on the game. He's big into the Final Fantasy series now. But I think the big three were Akira Toriyama for the art style, also the guy behind Dragon Ball. They brought in Hironobu Sakaguchi, who's the guy who created the Final Fantasy series, and Yuji Ori, who was responsible for the Dragon Quest series. So they brought in all three of these juggernauts together, and they created one hell of a game. I love Chrono Trigger. So yes, I think it's better than most of the Final Fantasies, if not all of them. Chrono Trigger is amazing. If any of you,
it's time travel done right.
Exactly.
I hate time travel as a mechanism in a story because it's like the universal reset button. But in this one, there are consequences regardless of what period of time.
The trial alone shows you that your actions have consequences. What you would normally. Yeah, exactly. It shows your actions have consequences, guys. You can't just eat somebody's lunch, abandon the search for a little girl's cat, or any of the other stuff, or run away from Marl after she's trying to calmly pick out candy, or rush to grab the shiny pendant before you help the girl you just knocked over at the fair. All of these things will come back to bite you in the butt because you'll be found guilty and sentenced to be executed at your trial. Or if you don't act like a piece of garbage at the fair and you play the game properly and you act like a polite gentleman and a good hero, you'll be found innocent. You'll still be secretly sentenced to be executed, but the public will love you, and you might even get some good items for your trouble.
Exactly.
By the way, money is not an issue in this game, by the way, either. I never ran out of money. I've played this game 5 times, and I'm not joking by that. I've played this Chrono Trigger 5 times at this point, and money has never been an issue. I have been very comfortable by the end of the game with all my weapons, my armor, my items, everything. It is not hard to grind money. You don't even have to. It's scaled very well. Final Fantasy VI has the exact same issue. You can get so much money after a while if you grind that out in the game from enemies. It's crazy. Especially for 14 party members, you better grind the money out if you're going to buy stuff. But Chrono Trigger, yes. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
It is absolutely amazing. I love the game to death. Sorry, I fanboyed a little bit for a bit there, but I love the game to death. I love the game to death. It is amazing.
That is no problem. It is fantastic. I mean, my first experience with it was not on Super Nintendo. It was actually the PlayStation version.
Same here, actually.
All the cool cutscenes and everything that they animated.
I love that. Like, there were some people I was talking to, they're like, man, I wish I would have played Chrono Trigger. I can't believe they had cool visual cutscenes that look like the graphic art style of Dragon Ball. I'm like, you do know the Super Nintendo couldn't put out that kind of power, right? That was on the PS1. That wasn't part of the original Super Nintendo release. But for those of you, because the PS1 port of Chrono Trigger, I mean, it has like slower load times in and out of battle. And some parts of the pacing aren't completely there because, it's not a cartridge, but I mean, come on. At the end of the day, the CD hardware allowed them to make these amazing cutscenes from Akira Toriyama, and they look absolutely amazing. They hold up better than a lot of video games today. So it is beautiful. And I played it also through the PS1 collection. Good luck trying to get a Super Nintendo copy, by the way, nowadays, guys. Some of them, it's over $700 now for a complete copy. So good luck. It's some of them are up to $1,000 now. So good luck. Man. Better scour the internet for a good deal. Just don't get ripped off.
One of the other good versions of this, and it might be easier to find, would be the DS version.
DS version, yes.
That came with 2 extra dungeons.
And some people really like the DS version for that alone, because it's more accessible, and the fact that they clean up some of Ted Woolsey's original translation issues from the original Super Nintendo and PS1 ports.
Yeah.
So people really like the DS version for that. There's also a mobile version as well, which I don't hear good things about at all. I hear that it's the same thing about the Final Fantasy VI phone port that they made. It looks awful. It is ugly as sin. It is. Yep. It's not very good. No, play the original, guys. Or better yet, play the pixel remastered version as far as that one goes.
Yep.
Play that one on the collection. You can play 1 through 6. You cannot beat that deal.
Good luck finding a physical copy on PS4 though.
I'm very sad right now. I don't know what. I have to buy it online. Can't buy a physical copy. It's too expensive. The variants, letter variants on the box go for hundreds of dollars now, for whatever reason, and I don't understand why. It's a misspelling, guys.
It's like misprinted Magic cards or Yu-Gi-Oh cards or something like that.
Exactly.
It's like there's nothing intrinsically different. It's just somebody screwed up at the printers.
And I already own enough expensive versions of some of these anyway. I have the Japanese Super Famicom copy of Chrono Trigger, along with Final Fantasy VI, which is over there. And I have a box copy of Final Fantasy III, aka 6, on the Super Nintendo.
Is that sealed?
No, it's not sealed. It's in a protective case. It is fully complete, though.
Nice.
By the way, I don't own a Super Nintendo, and I still bought it. I still bought it.
Yeah, I still have one. I don't know if it works.
I have never owned one, unfortunately. I've played a lot of these either through the PS1. Thankfully, Square released them on the PS1. That's how I was able to play pretty much all of these, like, Super Nintendo RPGs, despite some of the technical limitations that come with those PS1 ports. Because 6 suffered a lot with that. Because the going in and out of battle, as well as like the random encounter rate, is bad. It is extremely slow. I will be honest. It takes like 15, 20 seconds to load into a battle, whereas in the Super Nintendo, it loads immediately. So, yeah. But it's still a good, cheaper way to play it, because that complete copy of 6 on the Super Nintendo goes for over $300 right now.
Good Lord.
So, if not more by this point, I don't know. Get the PS1 version. You get 6 and I think 5 in the same set. I think that's what it is. Either that or 4 and 6. I'm not sure.
Oh, hold on one second.
Alrighty. Yeah, that's definitely a good way to play some of these RPGs, though, guys. If any of you are if you're retro video gamers, and if you don't want to go for like the pixel remasters and want to play the original, definitely the PS1 copies would be the best way to go.
No, I was mistaken. I thought I had it. I've got, well...
I think I do have it, actually.
Here's what Origins cost back in the day.
Oh, wow. I bet you that is not the price now.
Oh, God, no. This is
no.
1 and 2.
Right. Actually, I think I have something, too.
Okay.
Well, it's around somewhere. I have the greatest hits version of that.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, I don't have the black label, but the game's the same, thankfully.
Yeah.
Here, actually.
Yeah, I thought I had the one we were talking about, because I think it was.
Oh, I do.
4 and 5, and then Chrono Trigger in 6.
Yeah, because I have that PS1 copy that you just showed as well.
Okay.
I have that collection greatest hits. Actually, I have all of them right here for those PS1 collections. That's 8. We don't talk about that right now. Oh, here it is right here. It is, here it is right here. So this is the dual pack. It's also greatest hits. This is Final Fantasy 6 and 5. So it is 6 and 5.
6 and 5. Okay,
the
so
collection
that was 4
that came
with Chrono Trigger.
Yeah, 4. I actually have that one right here too. For 4 and Chrono Trigger. Yep, that's it right here. This is the collection with 4 and also greatest hits. You're noticing a trend here.
Hey,
but yeah,
you still got them.
I do that. That's the important thing.
Yes.
But this is how I was able to play it. Unfortunately, the one with 6 and 5 for me, the back case that holds the one for Final Fantasy 6 is broken. So I'm gonna have to get a replacement for that at some point. The problem with replacing these double jewel discs, though, is that they are incredibly hard to get the art in and out, as well as the actual game disc itself. So not always completely worth it. But nonetheless, though, I also have them. They're a good way to play them.
Yes.
And cheaper.
Well, and you can still find PS1s all over the place.
That's true.
In used shops.
Yeah. Or emulate, I guess. I'm not condoning emulation if you're watching this, Nintendo or Sony or anybody else. But if you hypothetically wanted a cheaper gray area way to play them, emulation is a thing. If you wanted to go that route.
In this made-up hypothetical scenario, you could hypothetically get one of those PlayStation Minis that they sell for like $20-$30.
That's true.
And theoretically, hypothetically, you could alter the data on there with a thumb drive and add multiple games, hypothetically and theoretically, of course.
So and save yourself probably thousands of dollars worth of games at this point that would possibly maybe be on it.
Yes. In this made-up situation.
Yes. Because I can tell you some of the games that I've seen on there. Symphony of the Night alone on there is over $100, and that is one I've seen on there for Castlevania. It's almost $200 now for a physical copy of it.
That's that one game. The greatest hits or regular?
Regular.
Okay. Trying to remember which one I have. I have one of them.
I have the black label. Okay. I have to dig it out, but I do own it. It's also one of my favorite games of all time. I love Symphony of the Night. I know it's not, so I'm kind of bending my own rules here a bit, but yeah, I know it's not Square Enix, but Konami, please bring it back. Like, no mobile games, no multiplayer, whatever. Just bring it back. Which is never going to happen.
I'm trying to think.
I know the Netflix series Nocturne is coming out here soon, but I mean, it's not a video game.
Yeah. So it's kind of funny that you mentioned anime. So while Squeenix did kind of screw the pooch when it came to Spirits Within or whatever the hell it is. Bad. Look, I'll level with everyone here. The best part about that is actually in the extras where they recreated Thriller with all the different characters from the movie.
I never even saw that.
Oh yeah, it is worth looking up. It is pretty hilarious. It's like, okay, I can get into the movie now. But Final Fantasy actually had a couple of different animated movies. There was an anime that basically took place after, I believe it was Final Fantasy V. Gosh, it was 5 because it still had Bart's in there and a couple of the other characters. And I mean, they're still going to the moon and they're just like checking things out. I think they brought back, X-Death in some way. The only summon spell that the female character could use was chocobos. And so she's like, it's like Care Bears, like the Care Bear stare, but it's just chocobos, like flying out of her, attacking the enemies.
You actually go ahead, but you reminded me of something else too, Fries, concerning a movie that Square made.
Okay. They also did, and I think it's available on streaming, I'm not sure, Final Fantasy Unlimited, which they had a lot of plans for it, but it only lasted one season, in which you have a character, the black. You've got it.
I have Advent, not the one you're talking about. I have Advent Children here.
Advent Children was fantastic. I got, theoretically, I got a bootleg version that was in Japanese to watch it before it was here in the States.
I believe you.
Yeah. So I mean, they've delved in. They have gone into other mediums. There are some mangas out there. There's some light novels, of course, this various cell phone games and everything. But when it comes to like storytelling, I think that some of the earlier stuff that they did with the animes were a lot better.
Yeah, I would 100% agree with you on that. When you mentioned anime, I think they did something for Final Fantasy VII as well. I cannot remember the title of it, but they recreated the Last Order Final Fantasy. It's like a 20 to 30 minute animated short film where it goes over like the Nibelheim incident. And it's beautifully animated, I have to admit. The only criticism I have of that film, from what I saw, was that moment where Cloud throws Sephiroth into the pit. In the original game and every other media where he's impaled on Sephiroth's sword, without being, by the way, he's not injected with Mako at that point. He's not like a super soldier. But he chucked Sephiroth into the Mako in like a heroic moment, showing that despite the fact he's like this weak guy who's just lost everything that he cares about, his hometown, his mom, everything, he still took down the legendary Sephiroth, the greatest soldier of all time. But in that movie, Sephiroth just smiles and just willingly jumps in. That's it. Cloud no one even strikes him at that point. He's just like, and then just jumps. That's it. So yeah, I don't know why they did that in the movie, but that's really my only critique of that one.
They need to respect the canon. Come on.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, because Cloud's not even impaled in that one either. Sephiroth just smiles. He's like, phew, jumps in with Genova's head for no reason, like he's going for like a swim or something. I don't understand why he did that. But there was that one, and I actually watched Advent Children for the first time last year, and I didn't theoretically acquire it from other services or sites because I checked out clips on YouTube, which honestly, your hypothetical theoretical version, Dennis, probably would have been better because the YouTube quality stuff is not very good at all. But no, it's not. But I did eventually acquire a DVD copy. This is actually extremely cheap. This is actually supposed to be the collector. Well, not the full-blown box set with like the Cloud figure and the jewelry and everything else that Cloud wears in the movie. It's not that one. This is supposed to be the one that came with a sleeve, and it came with like 2 discs. When I bought this off of Amazon, I have the 2 discs, but the seller included a note that said, "Oh, sorry, I don't have the sleeve for it. My apologies." And I was like, well, yeah, I waited all this time for a full, complete collector's set, and I don't have that now. So at least I have the movie.
Yeah.
But yeah, and I ended up watching it, and I still have the limited edition like content on it. Besides, it's not even that expensive. This thing's like not even $15 off of Amazon. It's extremely cheap to buy. I bought mine for like 10 or something like that. So if you want to get a copy online, like a physical one, you're not going to be breaking the bank. I would do it now, though, before it goes up in value, if it even does. But either way, though, I checked out Advent Children. I liked the movie. As a huge fan of 7, I wasn't sure what to expect going into it. And the Square Enix, I know they're a game company, but they actually did a good job with Advent Children. I like the direction that they took with Geostigma, with Cloud still dealing with his own personal feelings concerning the deaths of Aerith and Zack. From the original game. I like the depiction of the characters, the fact that they teamed up at multiple points to take down Kadaj and all these other Sephiroth remnants. And I really enjoyed that part. I think it was very well done. Some people don't like what they did to Rude and Reno in the movie. They felt like they made them too much like jokesters compared to like their serious demeanor from the original. I actually like that. I think it's a natural evolution of their already somewhat comedic nature together. Which is depicted in Remake, by the way, too, a little bit. But I like the direction they took those two in. The fact that they were like these anti-hero figures rather than like being enemies of Cloud, they were actually helping out and fighting off Sephiroth while still working for Rufus, who, by the way, survived in from the original 7. But I really liked Adventures. I think it was a good movie. It's not perfect. It does have issues. The villains, for example, I feel were kind of like a shoe-in to bring Sephiroth back. I didn't find Kadaj and them very interesting. Or Lozu. Like, the best scene with Lozu was when he's not screaming Mother and Genova all the time. He and Tifa's fight scene in the church was pretty cool, actually.
Oh, yeah.
Seeing them back in action. When I say Tifa, of course, I mean, as of last year, the year before, the new ambassador of Italy, apparently. so yeah, that's where I recognize her from. If you don't get that reference, don't look it up. But either
don't look
way,
it up at work.
Exactly. Don't look it up at work. Look it up in your own time when you're at home and nobody else is around. Yeah. But bit of an inside joke there. But I did like the movie is not perfect, but I do think that it was a good send off for the timeline of 7, giving Cloud closure, bringing back Aerith and Zack briefly, where they kind of depart after Cloud kind of comes to terms with his guilt and his guilt over their deaths. And that fight scene with Sephiroth was extremely epic. I absolutely loved Cloud's sword. I can't remember the name of it, but like that multi-sword that kind of looked like the Buster sword that he has. I love that exactly 10-minute fight sequence between him and Sephiroth. The fact that the entire party from 7 teamed up to take out Bahamut Sin, which, speaking of Bahamut Sin, it's buried, but I have a Play Arts Kai figure from the early 2000s of Bahamut Sin, actually. I was going to dig it out, but it's underneath some other stuff. But I did a video on that, too, going over some collection pieces, so check that out. Shameless plug, again. But yeah, I do like the movie, though. It is really good. I very much enjoyed that one. I don't know if you had any like experiences with like this one, Dennis, or like any other Final Fantasy movie, for that matter, that you liked or didn't care for.
Well, with this, I was kind of surprised because it did feel like kind of a Dragon Ball Z-esque approach to the fight scene, like with Cloud and Sephiroth. Because I mean, in the original game, they're at least like still standing on the ground rather than just flying through the airs. But one of the neat things about the Omni Slash that he did at the end of the fight was they incorporate that into Dissidia in both versions.
Mm-hmm.
So you have like, I think it's called Omni/Slash version 2 or something, but
something
like the sword splits and he's just, going to town and everything. And I mean, it looks really cool. Yeah. I mean,
oh yeah.
Since he decided to leave the Buster Sword behind at the end of 7.
Yeah.
Kind of going back with Final Fantasy Unlimited, it did, like I said, it only did one season. They had planned on doing more with it. It ended up like they had a cell phone game. This is, Japan's got all the cool stuff long before we do. So it was like a continuation of the story with the characters after the end of the season, and something happened to where they weren't able to finish what they wanted to do, but somebody went and basically wrote like a light novel as to the finale that they had in mind. So at least we got some kind of closure there. Somebody has fan translated it at least.
That sounds about right, actually, for a lot of like these older IPs from Japan that have been translated by people now. So now we can go back and like play the games or watch the movie and understand what's going on in the process. And when you bring up novel as well, Final Fantasy VII also has a novelization. It's called On the Way to a Smile, which is, I'm not going to describe everything that happens, but it's basically what happens within that 2-year span between the original 7 and Advent Children. So like what everyone was doing, they all kind of, they were still friends, still stayed in contact, but they all split apart and went on their own journeys in that 2 years. So they all had their own experiences in rebuilding the planet. Like the city that's depicted in Advent Children and Dirge of Cerberus Edge, it was a city that was built on the edge of the destroyed Midgar. And Cloud took over a delivery service. Tifa opened up a new bar. Barrett started exploring the planet to discover new resources of energy and to kind of come to terms with his past. Still blaming himself for the deaths of Biggs, Wedge, and Jesse from the original game. So, and then Sid, he discovers oil rather than using Mako energy, which, as we know, is still just as dangerous to use. I don't know how it works in the planet in 7, but we're basically draining our planet right now, Voyle, and it's not very good for the environment. So I don't know how much good that's going to be in the future of 7, but it's better than Mako, I guess.
Yeah. Well, You'd think with materia that they would be able to figure out some way to use the materia that exists within. Like it duplicates in the game. So like, okay, just figure out which one is going to be best for energy. Oh, a lightning one. Just I'm going to keep using it until it dupes, and we'll just put a lightning materia in each one or something.
Or like double cut materia that everybody wanted to grind for so badly.
Oh.
Yeah, I just remember it. But it's definitely one of those things where the novel's good. I tried to buy it recently and from a store a little bit away from my house, and they didn't have it. So I was very sad, but I read it online, so it didn't really matter to me. I read about it online anyway. Okay. So it's a good novelization, but it just goes to show Square has branched off into so many things: video games, movies, and books, and so many other forms of media. Some of them are hit or miss, like we've talked about here throughout this podcast episode, or not. This isn't really a podcast, but we've talked about through this episode, like live with you guys, because I saw some people popping in and out, checking out the stream here and there, which I do appreciate very much. But the Final Fantasy series and Square Enix really aren't going anywhere for some time now. They're going to continue to create new games.
And also branching into board games and card games.
Card games, board games, and the complicated video game series that is Kingdom Hearts, which we did not touch on once so far throughout this entire thing.
That fever dream is like a whole new show all on its own.
We are not going to be covering the extensive story that is Kingdom Hearts. I do like the Kingdom Hearts series. I do think 2 is the best game in that franchise. But
I would agree with that.
But the story is so complicated in so many ways, and I understand all of it, and part of me wishes I didn't, because that goes to show how much research I poured into this crap, of the games I've played, all of the lore research and videos I've watched online, and that, guys, that took me years to understand everything. You try explaining any of this to anyone, the whole timeline up until 3 at this point, about everything that happens. The first thing tell you what, here's a base question that you try explaining to your friends. All of the intricacies, the plot details, the lore, everything. Why are there so many versions of Sora and Xehanort? Start from there. You will quickly go down a rabbit hole, which everyone will immediately lose interest in, and they will go back to play Mario or something else. They will not go back to Kingdom Hearts. They'll be completely turned off. You try explaining why Roxas looks like Ventus, why Ventus was inside Sora's heart. When he impaled himself on the Keyblade, he created Roxas. And then this weird girl named Naminé, who's apparently the Heartless of Kairi, but Kairi's heart was actually inside of Sora's from the beginning of Kingdom Hearts 1. And then you have Roxas looks like Ventus because Ventus was one of the original Keyblade wielders who, when he was dying in a prequel game that came out years after the original games, entered Sora's heart because he was badly damaged by Xehanort, and that's why Roxas looks like Ventus. And then Kairi could use a Keyblade because she briefly touched Aqua's Keyblade in the original game. Aqua was abandoned in the realm. It's a lot of I just dumped a good bit of lore on you right there, and none of it makes sense, I'm sure.
Even to fans of the series, but the other two questions that people should be asking is, why does Donald suck at healing? And how is it that for the longest time, up until Final Fantasy 16, was he the most powerful mage canonically in Final Fantasy lore?
That's not even a joke.
Only one that could use Giga Flare.
Square came out and said this, and people have unanimously agreed up until 16. Donald Duck, the iconic Disney character that is a mage in the Kingdom Hearts series, is the most powerful spellcaster in all of Final Fantasy. The strongest one in any game. More powerful than Aerith, more powerful than Garnet from Final Fantasy 9, more powerful than Yuna in 10, more powerful than any other spellcaster. Because it was, I think, Zeta Flare is the name of that spell.
That's what it was.
Zeta Flare, yeah. That he uses to take out Terra Xehanort, which that's a whole other story in itself. Exactly. But yeah, he blows up a character using the most powerful magic spell in Final Fantasy / Kingdom Hearts history, and it was only topped by, I think, Bahamut in Final Fantasy 16, who could also use an improved version of Zeta Flare.
Yeah. And before that, I think it was Bravely Default when they had where they had Zeta Flare.
Yeah. Oh gosh, I can't. In fact, in Kingdom Hearts 3, brief spoiler, it's so powerful that Donald dies using it in Kingdom Hearts 3. Like it's a good thing that timeline was erased because Donald
he got better.
Yeah, it was after they reset that, after Sora went back in time and saved everybody, which there's so much stuff in Kingdom Hearts.
It's fun. Don't get me wrong. It's fun.
Oh yeah, it is.
You can frustrate yourself with the story or with the boss fight against Sephiroth because he's way too overpowered.
Or the lingering will.
Oh yeah.
In Kingdom Hearts 2. Final Mix.
There's just so many. There's so many layers to this onion. So if you want to go down that rabbit hole, it's available on, I think, almost every system that's out right now.
I'm just gonna go buy an apple and enjoy that. I forget the onion. I'll throw the onion away. Just eat the apple. Like, if I wasn't already a fan of the series and have poured so much research ever since I was younger, because I grew up playing Kingdom Hearts. I played Kingdom Hearts when I was like 10 or so at a babysitter. I grew up playing Kingdom Hearts for years now before I got into Final Fantasy, and I like Final Fantasy more than Kingdom Hearts in a shorter time span. Not because Kingdom Hearts is bad, not by any means. It's good. But you will notice, the more you go through the series, you'll notice that if you take a shot for every time heart, light, darkness, friendship, or any of that other stuff comes up, you will die 100 times over. Maybe 1,000 times over. Now, I'll go 1,000,000 times over, most likely you will die regardless. Because that is the most common terms that come up all the time. And you'll realize the more that you go, it's very emotional. You will get invested if you're willing to dedicate the time, but the writing is bad in a lot of games. It is so simple. Even in Kingdom Hearts 2, the writing is not very good. And even in Kingdom Hearts 3, there's a conversation between Sora, Vanitas, and Ventus, where they're trying to convince him, why do you use darkness? Well, it's because I'm the opposite of you guys. It's like, don't use darkness anymore. But I am darkness. Okay. That's literally what he says at the end of the conversation. He's like, I'm not going to give up using darkness. And it's like, okay. Awkward, dramatic pause scene. Vanitas dies. That's it. That's just one example. The writing's not very good in this series. Gameplay's good though.
It is. shout out to Jello Apocalypse. He did a basically of Kingdom Hearts, and he said the same thing that you said about certain words. He's like, for the rest of this video, we're going to replace darkness with bees, and you will see that there is no difference really with the dialogue. It's like, damn it, he's right. I think I started playing 1 again on my PS4 after that. I watched that video for the first time. It's like, yeah, he made a really good point. Crap.
Yeah, I mean, it's the cracks become very, very apparent. And the major appeal here is that if you like Final Fantasy and you like Disney, you maybe, just maybe, you'll like Kingdom Hearts, where all the characters wear big shoes, for the most part, anyway.
Yeah, everyone's at least a size 14.
Pretty much, if not maybe a size 20. Just look at Sora.
Yeah. Oh,
but yeah. I actually have a Kingdom Hearts 2 poster right behind me here, actually.
I thought I recognized that.
That would be correct. Yeah, there's a Final Fantasy VII one back there for a wall scroll, and there's an Advent Children wall scroll there as well.
Oh, nice.
I completely forgot to mention that. I've been blocking it the whole time. But that's what, here's room reveal. That's what's hanging back there.
Nice.
Like Kingdom Hearts 2, it's good, but I feel like the series probably should have ended after 2. They have such a good story built up at that point. But then after 2 ended, they retconned, and this is not going to make... I'm going to just say this to Dennis because he understands. The rest of you, unless you play the series watching this video, you're not going to have any clue what I'm about to say. But they took the intentions of the organization, where they were doing it to get hearts because they were different from everybody else and they couldn't feel emotions, and they completely threw that out the window in Dream Drop Distance, where Xemnas just reveals to Sora, oh yeah, we had hearts the whole time, we just lied to everybody, we're just building a group for Xehanort so he can recreate the Keyblade War and get the Keyblade. Or like, everyone had it, we just lied the whole time, basically making it feels like the entire journey in 2 was just wasted, because that was one of the main themes why you sympathize with the organization and why they were making their own version of Kingdom Hearts in the first place. And they could have ended off with 2, by the way. Like, the organization story, they could have ended off with 2, because by that point Xehanort had a definitive identity at that point, and they took out the organization, the big bad guys from the first game, kinda from the card game one. I can't think of it right now. Chain of Memories, that's it.
See, and I played that one on my Game Boy and everything, and I enjoyed that one. It had really neat strategy to it and all of that.
I actually really liked Rechain.
And it bridged the gap between 1 and 2, because I don't think Squeenix realized that they would have a hit the way that they did. So that was to tide people over until 2. They finished 2, and like you said, they could have ended that story. They could have done a completely different story for 3, but then you have all this fluff in between, because it was 2009, I think, when 2 came out, and then we got 3. What? 2 years ago? 3 years ago?
3 came out in 2019. Kingdom Hearts 2 came out in 2005. Actually, believe it or not.
Oh God. My sense of time is completely off, but still, that's a long gap.
It took 14 years? Yeah, 14 years before Kingdom Hearts 3 came out. In that time period, they came out with 358 over 2 days to explain who the heck Roxas was at the beginning of Kingdom Hearts, which, by the way, came out 3 years after Kingdom Hearts 2 came out. Because when the first few hours of the game, you had no clue who Roxas even was or his backstory. So they came out with 358 over 2 days. I always describe that and the next game Recoded this way: 358, good story, awful gameplay. It's terrible. I'm not a fan of it whatsoever. It's terrible world structure. Recoded, really good gameplay, very innovative, terrible story, very meaningless except for like the last few seconds of the game where they reveal Terra, Aqua, and Ventus.
Yeah.
Birth by Sleep, which explained the origin of... I haven't played that one, but explain the origin story of Terra, Aqua, and Ventus. Dream Drop Distance, which is supposed to be Sora and Riku's Mark of Mastery exam, where they also reveal Xehanort is back to set up Kingdom Hearts 3. Story's decent, very good gameplay actually. I really like the motion flow. The Dreamers, the breeding system.
The flow motion was like parkour to the extreme.
I liked that. The flow motion of the combat was good. The world, not Square's best lineup of worlds, though. in Dream Drop Distance. I'm gonna be honest on that one. I understand they're saving all their big heavy hitter IPs for Kingdom Hearts 3, but Dream Drop Distance's worlds were like B tier Disney movies, maybe C tier, depending. I mean, you have Tron Legacy, the live action Tron movie, Hunchback of Notre Dame, which is more classic. The Three Musketeers movie with Sword Donald the Goofy from the early 2000s that nobody remembers.
Was that the one that had The World Ends With You? Was that the
that one had Shibuya? Well, Shibuya is not a world, but they include. Yeah, it had the characters from The World Ends With You and a new Traverse Town, which was good too. Actually, I like that world. But I can't even remember what some of the other. Oh yeah, Pinocchio, which is another Disney classic. I'll give you that one too. Some of the worlds were fine, but other ones like I don't even know what the worst world in Dream Drop Distance was for me, to be honest. The most boring one was the one the organization's from. Organization 13, the world that never was.
Yes. Okay.
That was the worst one, I think, overall. It was very bland, very generic, and it wasn't even Disney-esque. And the thing with that one is, what I liked about Dream Drop 2 was that Riku was playable. I think having another playable Riku, because in Chain of Memories, Riku had a set moveset and a set of cards. You couldn't change Riku's cards up at all. He wasn't very customizable. And you just ran through recreations of every single one of Sora's floors, just with the exception of a boss fight at the end of each one of them.
Yeah.
No. But Dream Drop was good. And then Kingdom Hearts 3, the big boy, the heavy hitter, to finally end the Xehanort saga of games, was good. But not as good as 2. I did have a few. Did you like 3?
I played it because I needed closure for the most part. That's basically what it broke down to.
Every Kingdom Hearts fan ever.
I needed closure on the story. I'd been waiting for so long for 3. I'd played their mobile game. I'd played all the other games, and it was just even like that weird one with where you're playing as Aqua while she's lost in the Land of Darkness, which still had a lot of light to it. Yeah, but the cutscenes honestly were a bit too long in places. I feel like they could have shortened them up a little bit, interspersed them a bit more. It was like, okay, I'm setting my controller down for 20 minutes while I'm watching a movie, and gameplay started.
Yep.
And at that point, my attention is just kind of gone.
I liked Kingdom Hearts 3. I think there's a lot of good things about it. The gameplay was fantastic and the visuals, but the story pacing to wrap up the Xehanort saga, it's just Sora at the beginning loses the one key ability he needs to revive the other Guardians of Light to take down Xehanort finally. But then he discovers, because you were possessed in Dream Drop Distance, you lost your power of waking. So Sora spends the entire game going to different Disney worlds and helping people out to get the power of waking back. And everything else, the actual conclusion to the series, is pushed off until the last 2 or 3 hours of the game, where they just dump everything in at the very end because the Disney worlds are basically pointless for the main story. Because pretty Sora much. At the end discovers Ventus but I don't have the power of waking. I can't bring you back. It was inside you all along, Sora. It was just sleeping. And it's like, are you kidding me? So you're telling me I went to all these Disney worlds basically for nothing for the main plot to take down Xehanort. It was inside you all along, Sora. I was like, are you kidding me? And the last 3 hours of the game were spent with the Keyblade Graveyard and just beating Xehanort up. They dumped everything in at the last second, which I didn't care for too much for the structure. And some of the worlds, I like the worlds in pretty much every other Kingdom Hearts game. This one had the worst world, and the most pointless one with Frozen. Frozen, I think, was the worst world in Kingdom Hearts 3.
I hated the labyrinth.
Yeah. It kicks the whole thing, it's a very loose story. They barely interact with any of the characters. Sora, Donald, and Goofy have no real purpose in it whatsoever. They completely drop the new Princess of Heart thing after that world too. That just goes away afterwards. They don't bring it up again. I mean, you get knocked off a mountain 3 times. That's all that happens to them throughout the entire one. And Square had bigger plans for the world, but because Frozen was so big at that time, Disney scrapped their original plans actually. For that world. No, I didn't care for Frozen very much either.
Yeah, I mean, they basically did a shot-for-shot remake of the, Let It Go song, interspersed with Donald, Goofy, and Sora trying to make it through the snowstorm. So, I mean, it was almost like watching the movie because my kids had been obsessed with the movie for so much. I can practically recite that damn thing.
Exactly. That's one of the big draws. Plugging in my device here. Don't mind me. That way it doesn't die here in the middle of stream. But yeah, I agree with you on that one too. Believe it or not, I watched Frozen twice and never finished it either time. So I have no experience whatsoever with this movie. But I can tell you what they did with it in Kingdom Hearts 3 was very disappointing. I would say overall. It wasn't very good. But I mean, Kingdom Hearts 3 is still a good game. I don't want to say that and say that it's not worth playing, because I do think it is worth playing all in all.
Yeah.
But
I mean, it's not, and when I say that I played it because I needed a closure, it's not that I'm saying that it's a bad game or anything. It's just that it's one of those ones that I've been waiting for so long because I need to know what happens, that I just like, I've invested all this time. I need to play it in order to get that closure.
Exactly.
So even if they did come out with 4, I don't know if I have the strength to go back.
No, I think they're going to take a long time before they come out with the 4th game. It's going to be a completely new saga. I've, for some reason, kept up on the Union Cross stuff to set up the Master of Masters and his council, if you want to call them that. And already the whole thing's confusing again, even for longtime players, with Zigbar's true motives and origin. The fact that Marluxia and the girl with like the lightning claws from the organization, that they were also both around during the ancient Keyblade War. Why Strelitzia is in this new world that Sora was transported to because he abused the power of waking. Who died in Keyblade times is also Marluxia, or Lauriam's sister. The fact that Ventus wasn't even supposed to have been part of the original group, and the fact he's also from ancient times. It's not very good. Square has not been good in keeping up on that. But
well, the problem is you've got to keep your timeline simple. You know, here's what
simple
you want to do. Here's there we go.
Yeah.
That wins the stream right there. But yeah.
The joke to end all jokes in this stream.
But no, I mean,
nobody can top that.
If you're building your world, you need to make sure that you know exactly where you're going to start, where you're going to end. The middle part is the hard part. I know this from trying to write myself, but you know, you have your beginning, have your ending, and then you figure out how you're going to get from point A to point B. And not
exactly.
I've got from point A to point B, and now I'm going to add all this extra stuff, you know, C, D, and E that should have actually been, you know, stuffed somewhere in the middle.
And ultimately, and that's the issue Kingdom Hearts 3 had, because if they would have layered all of the build-up for fans waiting since 2001, when the original Kingdom Hearts came out, the build-up to all of that over, about 20 years roughly at that point, 18 years when 3 came out, they should have spread it out through the entire game rather than dumping it all at the very end. But don't get me wrong, some of that content was extremely effective, though, at the end of 3. My favorite trio, because you have Sora, Riku, and Kairi, you have Roxas, Axel, and Xion, and then you have Aqua, Terra, and Ventus. I'm not going to lie, the best trio reunion was definitely Roxas, Xion, and Axel. That made me tear up and cry when I saw that, genuinely. And that was... I love those characters in the series. That was the best reunion out of all of them. I never really cared too much about Terra, Aqua, and Ventus. And it's not even just because I didn't play Birth by Sleep. I just don't find them to be as interesting as the others, if I'm being honest. Yeah. The Sea Salt trio were the best. Their reunion and Rox's reappearance at the end, that was the best part. But that being said, the pacing was still an issue. But it did have its good moments, though.
It did.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
But
just
that being said, guys,
all hell.
oh, absolutely, it's still confusing. Absolutely, it is. But it's still a solid series and another good IP from Square. That if you're willing to go through the trenches and learn all what this series has to offer, you might find some enjoyment out of it. But if not, go to Final Fantasy. Each game is in its own universe, with the exception of some crossover stuff like the Cydia. So.
Yeah.
but you can enjoy different Final Fantasy games without being invested in others. So that helps.
It does.
But yes. But either way, guys, we have reached almost 2.5 hours for this stream. This was a little bit longer than I was intending. Originally, I was telling Dennis behind the scenes that I was aiming for around 2 hours roughly to kind of keep this. And it would have stayed that way normally, but then Kingdom Hearts came up, and then
I derailed it. I derailed it. I'm sorry.
No, you're perfectly fine. Because I was thinking about talking about Kingdom Hearts, and I'm like, I don't want to confuse Dennis, because I don't know if he's played the games much. But when you mentioned, I'm like, oh, cool, we could talk about Kingdom Hearts for about 20-some minutes. So, and we did.
Yep.
So, and it's another Square Enix property as well, so that kind of helps tie into the episode. But either way, guys, I think this is going to be a good point to end off the stream here, the episode. First of all, at the ending here, Dennis, for this long here, thank you so much for joining me in on this stream. It's been awesome having you here. We have talked about so many amazing and awesome things concerning the company of Square, the Final Fantasy series, several games and series that they've produced over the years, and just kind of giving everyone an idea, everything there is to know. Not everything, but a lot of things to know about Final Fantasy and Square as a company. But thank you for joining me along on this journey here. Is there anything, while we're ending off the stream here soon, that you wanted to kind of cap off for the audience? Like final thoughts or anything like that?
Well, thanks for having me for starters. This is my first ever live stream that I've ever done. So this was an experience. I will say that, if you enjoy a game that other people don't, as long as you're getting enjoyment out of it, you win ultimately. So don't let our opinions or other people's opinions sway you from trying any particular game that you want to give a shot. So, I mean, there's so many games out there. This is like almost a golden age for gamers right now. Just about everything you could want to play is available in one form, legally, hypothetically, theoretically, in other forms as well. You just have to know where to look. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And there you go. That's a good message to cap off. Everyone's going to have differing opinions, especially with the mountains of games we've talked about in this stream from Square Enix. But play what you like. Give all of these games a shot if you do so wish. Everyone's going to have different tastes. Respect each other's opinions, because not everyone's going to agree on everyone's stance, but that's what makes gaming so fun. Everyone gets to play and experience what they want to, and everyone is entitled to have their own opinion on the quality of a video game. But the whole point is to have fun, regardless of what you think about it. So just keep that in mind as you continue forth in your gaming journeys from what we've talked about here. So a very good message to cap off here at the end as well. But otherwise, though, guys, at the end of the stream here, Dennis, after the stream goes up as a video, I'm going to be linking quite a few things because I know you're part of a few shows. So you want to tell the audience where they can find you? Because people are going to go back and watch the video of this, I'm sure.
Well, if you want to check out Rulebooks Anonymous, we're available pretty much everywhere podcasts are. You can even say, hey, Alexa, play Rulebooks Anonymous. There we are. You'll find a lot of solo episodes because I'm the one that's basically in control of the equipment and editing and distributing and a lot of stuff. My co-hosts are amazing. They do a lot of the research for the board games that we do. Right now, a couple of my co-hosts are in Gen Con checking out all the cool stuff that they have there. Kind of dovetailing with Disney stuff. There's a new card game coming out called Lorcana that was developed by Ravensburger and Disney, and plays kind of like Magic the Gathering for what we've seen. So we'll have reviews and all sorts of cool stuff to share about that soon.
All right, excelente. And guys, definitely go check out Dennis. I've known him for a few years here, ever since we did our podcast collaborations. Dennis is a very knowledgeable guy when it comes to RPGs. His show, I've checked out since then, is fantastic. All the reviews they do, all the funny discussion and comedy that comes along with it, the process. All the guests they bring on from time to time, also fantastic. And go and check out their stuff. I'm going to link it in the description of this episode because that's one cool feature of StreamYard. I did see some people pop in here to watch us briefly from time to time here on the channel. And thank you guys very much for checking it out live, for those of you who did. And for those of you who missed the stream, sorry, but you can watch the video, so you do have some kind of incentive. But please go and check out Dennis's stuff. It will be linked in the description of this future video when it goes up. And I'm not even going to plug this channel because this has been my main YouTube channel for years. You guys know who I am at this point. So I'm not going to say check out DeBoss Official when this is the YouTube channel that the stream has happened on. So, if you want to check out anything, go check out the newest episode of my the Bosscast podcast, where I talk about my college experiences, my internships, and kind of the wrap up to the long overdue wrap up for season 1. Or check out the Nostalgia Factor, where I have some retro video game stuff on there as well. So go and check that stuff out. But check out my stuff and check out Dennis's stuff as well. Dennis, thank you very much once again for being on here. I hope to continue doing this show, also called the Nostalgia Factor. With a different gaming theme or guest appearances every single time I do one of these streams. But Dennis, this was a very good first start. I absolutely love doing this with you, man. And thank you once again for showing up. I do appreciate it.
No problem.
All right. With that in mind, guys, this has been Ryan and
Dennis.
And Dennis.
I hesitated.
This has been Ryan and Dennis coming from you. I have to work on this tagline at the very end. I'm so sorry for messing this up, guys. I will get this down in future episodes for a cool outro. This has been Ryan and Dennis coming to you guys with the Nostalgia Factor. Take care, guys.
All right.